Story 1. At my sister's wedding, Mom texted, "You're a disgrace. Stay the hell away from her day." After I covered 6,000 deposits, so I transferred all $24,000 in remaining bills to my sister's deadbeat husband and watched them panic. Then, I exposed their lies to the whole family. Hey Reddit, my sister begged me to help make her dream wedding happen, and I did. Later, they messaged me saying it would be embarrassing for them if I show up because I'm a plumber. I respected their choice, but I canceled every payment I was going to make and legally transferred the bills to my brother-in-law. What followed was a complete shit show. Here's what went down. I, 35 male, have been the responsible one in my family since I was probably 14 years old. You know that guy in every family who somehow becomes the go-to solution for everyone else's terrible life choices. Yeah, that's me. My phone buzzes at 2 a.m. because Mom needs to loan Dad $800 for a transmission repair, except they'd blown their car fund on a spontaneous trip to Cabo. Sister calls crying because she blew her rent money on a designer purse and some MLM pyramid scheme. And guess who's transferring cash before she gets evicted again? And like an absolute chump, I always said yes every single time. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't exactly struggling. I'd worked my ass off building a solid plumbing business, saved up a decent chunk of change, and lived below my means. Turns out, people will pay good money to fix their broken toilets and burst pipes, and I was smart enough to invest the profits instead of blowing them on stupid shit like my family did. But somewhere along the way, my bank account became the family's emergency fund. Stacy, my younger sister, was the golden child. 29 years old, and she'd never held a job longer than 6 months because retail was soul-crushing and office work stifled her creativity. She once told me with a completely straight face that paying bills was just society's way of controlling the free spirit. I shit you not. This woman thought electricity just magically happened, and rent was more of a suggestion than an obligation. But Mom and Dad, they ate that crap up with a spoon. Stacy was an artist, they'd say, too sensitive for the regular world. Meanwhile, I'm crawling under houses and fixing broken sewer lines. Apparently too blue-collar to deserve basic respect. My best friend Alan, a fellow contractor who runs an electrical business and has zero patience for bullshit, put it best one night over beers. "Dude, your family treats you like a freaking vending machine. They push your buttons, you dispense cash, and nobody says thank you." And honestly, I couldn't remember the last time they'd asked how I was doing. Last fall, Stacy dropped the engagement bomb. She'd been dating this guy, Trevor, for all of 3 months, and suddenly they're picking out venues like they'd been together since high school. Trevor was everything my parents wished I could be. MBA from some fancy business school, wore suits to work every day like he was closing billion-dollar deals instead of processing insurance claims in middle management. Drove a leased BMW. The kind of guy who used buzzwords to order coffee and thought his business degree made him superior to us working-class peasants. Dad immediately started treating him like the son he never had, the successful son. "Trevor really has his life together," he'd say right in front of me. Finally, someone in this family with real ambition. Mom would nod along and add how nice it was that Stacy found someone who could provide for her properly. Meanwhile, I'm the guy who literally kept their lights on and prevented their house from flooding when the main water line burst last winter. But apparently fixing toilets doesn't count as real success. Trevor loved to remind me of this. He had this condescending way of talking to me like I was some kind of charity case who needed career advice. He'd suggest I think about expanding beyond the hands-on work, pausing on hands-on, like I was picking up roadkill instead of running a business that cleared 6 figures annually. The engagement party was at Olive Garden, Stacy's choice because it was ironic and fun, but really because Trevor was cheap as hell. Despite all his big talk about investing in quality experiences, he proposed with a ring that definitely came from one of those no payments for 12 months jewelry store deals, and everyone acted like he just presented her with the crown jewels. Mom gushed about how perfect Trevor was for Stacy. Dad shook his hand like he was greeting the Pope and actually called him son. Alan was there for the engagement dinner. Stacy had invited him because she wanted all my friends to meet Trevor. Big mistake. Alan sized Trevor up in about 30 seconds and spent the rest of the night making subtle digs that went completely over Trevor's head, asking him about how exciting insurance management must be and how he was really making a difference in people's lives. Trevor ate it up, talking about risk assessment matrices and claims optimization protocols like he was saving the world, one denied claim at a time. Later in the parking lot, Alan shook his head. That guy's faker than a $3 bill. Bet you $20 he's drowning in debt trying to keep up appearances. That's when Stacy started talking about her dream wedding. Pinterest boards appeared overnight. Venue tour commenced. She had spreadsheets for everything except the actual budget. The hints started subtle. She'd sigh during family dinners about wishing they could afford the lakeside venue, but it was just so expensive. Then she'd give me that look like a puppy staring at a treat just out of reach. Mom joined in, saying how she wished they could help more, but things were tight right now. Translation: Dad bought a $3,000 fishing boat last month and they blew their savings on that Cabo trip. Trevor would just sit there with this smug little smile like he was watching peasants beg for scraps, occasionally mentioning how Stacy deserved the best. The pressure campaign lasted about 2 weeks before I finally agreed. Not because I wanted to, but because watching Stacy mope around and Mom drop increasingly obvious hints was like Chinese water torture. So at Sunday dinner, I dropped the bomb. That's fine. I'd cover the wedding expenses. Not help out, not contribute. I offered to handle the venue, catering, flowers, photography, the whole 9 yards. Stacy literally started crying and jumped up to hug me like I just told her she won the lottery. Trevor shook my hand with this firm businessman grip like we just closed a major deal. Mom beamed at me like I'd finally done something right, telling Stacy how lucky she was to have a brother who understood what family meant. For about 5 minutes, I felt like maybe all those years of being the family's financial safety net had actually earned me some genuine appreciation. Maybe they finally saw me as more than just a bank account with a pulse. Alan pulled me aside afterward with that expression he gets when I'm being particularly stupid. "You sure about this, man? That's a lot of cash to drop on people who barely acknowledge you exist most of the time." "It's Stacy's wedding," I said. "Family, you know. If you say so, brother, just keep your receipts." I should have listened to Alan. Planning Stacy's dream wedding was like herding cats, while those cats set money on fire and criticized your technique. By March, the venue alone was running $12,000. The catering estimate came back at $8,500 for 87 guests. Apparently, she had decided she needed the premium package with past hors d'oeuvres and a carving station. The flower arrangements she'd picked out looked like they belonged at a state funeral and cost about as much as my truck. But here's where it gets interesting. All these vendors wanted contracts signed and deposits paid, but they also needed someone to be the primary contact for final billing and day of coordination. The venue coordinator explained during one of our many phone calls that they needed one person designated as the primary account holder for final charges and last-minute decisions, usually the groom or the person paying. That little piece of information got filed away in my brain for later use. Stacy changed her mind about everything roughly every 48 hours. First roses, then peonies, then some exotic flowers that cost $200 per centerpiece, then back to roses, but a different color because they clashed with the bridesmaids' dresses that she'd also changed 3 times. She'd snap whenever I questioned the constant changes, insisting this was her one special day, and she shouldn't have to settle for less than perfect just because I was being cheap. Meanwhile, I'm juggling wedding vendor calls during my lunch breaks between plumbing jobs, reviewing contracts after work, and basically functioning as an unpaid wedding planner while Stacy focused on the creative aspects, which apparently meant saving inspiration photos on Pinterest and changing her mind every 2 days. Trevor's contribution to the planning process was providing strategic oversight. Translation: he'd show up to vendor meetings, act like he was in charge, then leave all the actual work to me. He'd tell people I had the practical stuff handled while he focused on the bigger picture. The condescension was constant. When I'd suggest more budget-friendly options, Trevor would give me that patronizing smile and explain that some things were worth the investment, that this was about quality, not just getting the cheapest option. This from the guy contributing exactly $0 to the investment. Alan watched me stress about vendor coordination one evening over beers and just shook his head. Dude, you realize you're basically being their unpaid wedding planner while they treat you like they're helping, right? When's the last time either of them even said thank you? I couldn't remember. Mom and Dad were even worse. They defer to Trevor on every decision like he was paying for everything. What does Trevor think? Became their default response to any question. When I'd point out that maybe the guy funding the wedding should have some say in the planning, Mom would get that tight-lipped look and tell me not to be difficult, that Trevor had excellent taste. The vendors started knowing me by name and treating me like their most high-maintenance client. They could hear the exhaustion in my voice when I'd explain that no, we're not doing the $300 orchid arrangements anymore. We're back to the roses, but now they need to match the bridesmaids' dresses. 3 months into planning, my spreadsheet of wedding expenses looked like a small country's defense budget. I'd spent more on Stacy's one-day party than most people spend on a car. And every time I'd bring up the mounting costs, Stacy would get this wounded look and ask why I was trying to ruin her day. The guilt trips were masterful. Mom would chime in about how important this day was for Stacy, how she was only going to get married once. Dad would nod along and add his sage wisdom about it being an investment in my sister's happiness. But I kept writing checks and making calls and coordinating deliveries because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. Plus, deep down, I figured this was finally my chance to be the hero, instead of just the guy who fixes everyone's mistakes. Big mistake. Thursday, May 15th. I remember the exact date because it's permanently burned into my brain. I was finishing up a bathroom remodel, hands covered in grout, when my phone buzzed. A text from Mom that I'll never forget. "Hi, Derek. Just wanted to let you know that Stacy and Trevor think it might be better if you don't come to the wedding. Trevor thinks your presence might make things uncomfortable since you two are from such different backgrounds. Hope you understand." I stared at that message for a solid 30 seconds, waiting for the follow-up text that would explain it was a joke or a mistake. Nothing came, just that cheerful little smiley face emoji, like she just told me they ran out of my favorite potato salad at the family barbecue. I screenshotted that message immediately and sent it to Alan with no commentary. His response came back in about 10 seconds. "Are you freaking kidding me?" Then my phone rang. Alan didn't bother with hello. "Tell me that's not real. Wish I could. They uninvited you from a wedding you're paying for because you might embarrass the groom." Different backgrounds, apparently. There was silence on the other end for about 5 seconds. Then Alan started laughing. The kind of dark, dangerous laughing that usually precedes someone doing something spectacularly stupid or brilliantly vengeful. "Oh, this is perfect. This is absolutely freaking perfect. You know what this means, right? That my family are assholes." "No, brother. Well, yes, but that's not the point. This means you're about to teach some very expensive lessons about respect, and I'm going to help." I waited 2 hours before responding to Mom's text, mostly because I didn't trust myself to type anything that wouldn't get me arrested or committed. When I finally replied, it was simple. "Interesting. I'll need to review some things." Red receipts showed they saw it immediately. No response. That night, Alan came over with Chinese takeout and a bottle of whiskey, spreading wedding contracts across my kitchen table like he was planning a military operation. "Let's talk about leverage," he said. "Alan has this beautiful quality where he can be absolutely ruthless while maintaining the demeanor of someone discussing the weather." He went through my wedding contracts with the focus of a forensic accountant, pointing out that I'd paid deposits on everything. But the final balances don't get charged until the week of the wedding, and every single contract had me listed as the primary contact. But they all had signature lines for final authorization of charges. Meaning you can transfer primary responsibility to someone else as long as you get their signature authorizing the charges, he explained. It's standard language to protect vendors from payment disputes between families. He called his lawyer buddy Jake to confirm the legal implications. After a 10-minute conversation that involved a lot of jargon I didn't understand, Alan hung up with a smile that would make a shark nervous. According to Jake, I could legally transfer the contracts to Trevor as long as he signed documents authorizing the final payments. The vendors didn't care who paid as long as someone was legally responsible for the bills. But why would Trevor sign anything? I asked. Because you're going to tell him it's to make him look like the provider. The plan was diabolically simple. I'd prepare contract amendments transferring liability to Trevor, then convince Stacy and Trevor to sign them by framing it as a romantic gesture. Trevor gets to look like the big shot provider. Stacy gets her fairy tale wedding where her husband is the hero, and I get the most expensive lesson in family dynamics ever delivered. What about the deposits I already paid? Consider them the price of tuition for the master class you're about to teach. Plus, think about it. Trevor's going to get hit with about $25,000 in final bills on his wedding day. That BMW payment is going to seem pretty manageable compared to explaining to his new wife their honeymoon got canceled. Alan spent the next 3 hours helping me craft the contract amendments. We made them look official as hell. Letterhead, legal language. The works. The key was making them seem like standard paperwork rather than a trap. The cover letter was a masterpiece of manipulation, explaining how I wanted Trevor recognized as the primary provider for his new family, that these amendments would transfer the vendor contracts to his name. So Stacy's wedding day would reflect his ability to take care of her. I'd already handled the deposits as my gift, but having his name on the final contracts would show everyone that he was the man stepping up for his wife. "You're evil," I told Alan when we finished. "I'm efficient," he corrected. "There's a difference." Friday morning, I called Stacy with the plan. I explained how I'd been thinking about what Trevor said about being a provider for his new family, and I wanted to do something special for them. I wanted Trevor's name on all the vendor contracts so that on their wedding day, everyone would know that her husband was the one who made it all happen. I'd already paid the deposits as my gift, but the final payments should come from Trevor, so he gets all the credit. Stacy started crying, happy crying for once. She thought it was really sweet and said Trevor would love that, mentioning how he'd been feeling weird about me paying for everything. I figured no man wants to feel like he's not providing for his wife, so this way he gets to be the hero and I get to be the supportive brother-in-law. Win-win. She called back 2 hours later. Trevor loved the idea. They'd both sign whatever paperwork I needed. Could I bring it by that weekend? Alan was at my house when I got off the phone, and the look on his face was pure admiration. That, he said, was art. Saturday afternoon, I showed up at Stacy and Trevor's apartment with a folder full of official-looking documents and the demeanor of someone handling routine paperwork. Trevor was practically glowing with self-importance, telling me how thoughtful this was and how he appreciated me understanding that he wanted to be the provider. I laid out the contract amendments on their dining table, walking them through each document and explaining what vendors they covered. I emphasized how this would make Trevor the primary contact for everything. The venue, catering, flowers, photography, DJ. Everything would get billed directly to him. His name, his responsibility, his wedding. Trevor signed everything with the confidence of a man who thought he was getting a good deal. Stacy signed as co-authorizer, with hearts practically floating over her head. "Just to confirm," I said, as they finished the last signatures, "you understand that all final payments, venue balance, catering, flowers, everything, will be charged to you starting next week. The deposits are covered, but the remaining balances are your responsibility now." "Right," Trevor said, not really paying attention, because he was too busy admiring his signature on official documents. Alan was waiting in his truck outside, trying not to laugh when I got in. When I told him Trevor had signed everything, and 24 grand in bills were about to hit him starting Monday, Alan asked about the family fallout. "That's the best part. I didn't cancel anything. I didn't ruin anything. I just made sure that the person who thinks he's too good to have me at his wedding gets to prove he can actually afford the wedding he's so proud of." Alan shook his head admiringly, calling it educational. Trevor was about to learn that talking big and backing it up are two very different things. And my family was about to learn that the guy they treat like an embarrassment is also the guy who's been keeping their whole fantasy afloat. Sunday came and went without any frantic calls, which meant they hadn't figured out the implications yet. But Monday morning, my phone started buzzing. Monday morning, the bills started hitting Trevor's accounts like missiles finding their targets. The venue called first around 9 hours a.m., asking for final payment of $12,000 and changed by Wednesday to confirm Saturday's booking. Then the caterer called about the $8,500 final balance due Thursday. The florist followed Tuesday morning, needing $3,000 for the flower arrangements. By Tuesday afternoon, Trevor's panic had reached biblical proportions. My phone rang around 3 p.m. It was Trevor, and he sounded like a man watching his financial life flash before his eyes. "Derek, we need to talk. There's been some kind of mistake with the vendor contracts." "What kind of mistake?" "They're all calling me for payment. Like full payment. $24,000 worth of payments, right? That's what we discussed when you signed the contracts. You wanted to be the provider, remember? But I didn't realize it was that much money all at once. Can't we work something out?" The desperation in his voice was beautiful. This was the same guy who'd spent months talking down to me, like I was some kind of charity case. And now he was begging me to bail him out. "I'm not sure what you want me to do, Trevor. You signed contracts taking responsibility for those payments. The vendors are just doing their job, but I don't have $24,000. And there it was, the truth behind all the fancy suits and business school terminology and condescending advice about expanding my business. He was broke, probably drowning in debt from trying to maintain his lifestyle on an insurance adjuster's salary. "That sounds like a problem between you and your creditors. I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're good with money, right? Business school and all that." He hung up. Alan called me an hour later, laughing so hard he could barely talk. Apparently, Trevor had posted on Facebook asking if anyone knew any short-term lending options for unexpected expenses, and the comments were brutal. Stacy called that evening crying. Trevor was having a panic attack, calling everyone he knew trying to borrow money. His parents couldn't help. Her friends didn't have that kind of cash, and the vendors were threatening to cancel everything. He wanted to postpone the wedding until they could save up the money. I pointed out that it was Thursday, and the wedding was Saturday, which made postponing a bit challenging. Stacy begged me to just pay for it, like they originally planned, promising she'd make sure I got invited. Trevor was just nervous about fitting in with my friends. He didn't mean anything by it. My friends. Like I was the one with the social problem. I explained that he had signed legal documents taking responsibility for those payments because he wanted the credit for taking care of his wife. I couldn't just override his wishes like that. When Stacy wailed that they didn't have the money, I suggested maybe they should have thought about that before deciding I wasn't good enough to attend. She realized I was doing this on purpose, and I didn't deny it. Trevor made his choice when he signed those contracts. She made her choice when she decided I was too embarrassing to have at her wedding. She hung up on me. Friday morning brought the inevitable family intervention. Mom, Dad, and Stacy showed up at my job site like some kind of dysfunctional SWAT team. "Derek, this has gone too far," Mom announced. "We made a mistake, but you're punishing Stacy for it." "I'm not punishing anyone." Dad stepped forward with his stern patriarch voice. "Son, we know you're upset about the wedding invitation thing, but destroying your wedding isn't the answer." "I didn't destroy anything. All the vendors are ready to go. Trevor just needs to pay them like he agreed to do when he signed the contracts." "But he doesn't have that kind of money," Stacy wailed. "Then maybe he shouldn't have signed contracts agreeing to pay it. I've been completely honest about what the contracts meant. The fact that he'd been too arrogant to pay attention to the numbers wasn't my problem." Alan drove by the job site around noon and found me eating lunch in my truck while my family continued their dramatic pleading outside. When he asked how the guilt trip was going, I told him they wanted me to bail Trevor out so Stacy could have her perfect day. Trevor was trying to get emergency loans. Stacy was calling every person she'd ever met looking for money. Mom and Dad were acting like I was the villain for letting Trevor be the provider he claimed he wanted to be. Alan pointed out that everybody was learning valuable lessons about financial planning. The wedding was supposed to happen in 24 hours, and Trevor still didn't have the money. The vendors were getting antsy about payment guarantees, Stacy was having daily meltdowns, and I was getting a front row seat to watch the whole house of cards collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. Friday evening, Trevor called one last time. "Derek, I'll do anything. I'll apologize publicly. I'll admit I was wrong about everything. I'll make sure everyone knows you're the one who made this wedding possible. Just please pay the vendors. I'll find a way to pay you back." And there it was. The guy who'd been too embarrassed to be seen with me at his wedding was now begging me to save his ass. "That's a generous offer, Trevor, but you know what? I think you've got this handled. Time to provide." Saturday morning was beautiful, perfect wedding weather. I spent it at home drinking coffee on my deck and reading the newspaper for the first time in months. My phone was buzzing constantly with updates I didn't ask for, but Alan kept me informed. The wedding had moved to the city park, you know, the one with the rusty playground equipment and the geese. Stacy was wearing her dress, but the reception was basically a potluck in the pavilion. Trevor's cousin brought a cooler of Bud Light. The photographer was Trevor's brother-in-law with an iPhone. The DJ was a Bluetooth speaker. Trevor looked like he was about to vomit. Stacy kept trying to smile for photos, but you could see the crazy in her eyes. Best part, Trevor's dad asked him why they moved the wedding to the park. Trevor told him they wanted something more intimate. His dad goes, "More intimate than the venue Derek paid for?" Awkward silence level maximum. The pictures that eventually surfaced on social media told the whole story. Carefully cropped photos that hid the picnic tables and discount decorations. Close-up shots of Stacy's dress that conveniently avoided showing the playground in the background. Everyone was trying to sell the intimate outdoor celebration narrative, but you could see the truth in their eyes. This wasn't rustic chic. This was damage control. Monday morning, I got a text from Stacy. "I hope you're happy. Our honeymoon got canceled because Trevor had to use the money to pay off the credit cards, but I guess that was your plan all along." Screw you. I didn't respond. What was I supposed to say? That maybe they should have thought about their finances before signing contracts they couldn't afford. That maybe treating your financial safety net like an embarrassment has consequences. 3 weeks after the park wedding disaster, I thought the whole thing was behind me. Trevor and Stacy had their shitty wedding, learned some expensive lessons about budgeting, and I got to enjoy the sweet satisfaction of watching entitled people face reality. Then Mom decided to rewrite history. It started with a Facebook post that Alan screenshotted and sent to me with a message. "Bro, you need to see this shit." The post was a masterpiece of victimhood and manipulation. Sometimes family disappoints you in ways you never imagined. When your own son steals money meant for his sister's wedding and then abandons the family in their time of need, it breaks your heart. Derek promised to pay for Stacy's wedding, took money from us for deposits, then disappeared when the bills came due. Poor Stacy and Trevor had to scramble to put together something at the last minute because her own brother was too jealous and selfish to keep his word. We raised him better than this. Some people just can't handle seeing others succeed. The comments were already pouring in from their church friends, neighbors, and extended family, expressing shock and sympathy for having such an awful son who would steal from his own sister and ruin her special day out of bitter jealousy. My phone was ringing before I finished reading. Alan was predictably outraged. "They're calling you a thief, dude. A freaking thief after you paid for their entire life for decades." I was weirdly calm about it. Maybe because I'd been expecting something like this ever since the park wedding photos went up. Mom couldn't handle people asking questions about why the venue changed, so she needed a villain to blame. And since I was already the family scapegoat, why not make me the thief too? When Alan asked what I was going to do, I told him I was going to teach them a lesson. Saturday morning, I sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop, my file cabinet, and a cup of coffee. Time to compile the greatest hits of Derek's financial bailouts, featuring screenshots of every Venmo, Zelle, and bank transfer I'd sent them over the past 5 years. Photos of checks I'd written for their car repairs, medical bills, and mortgage payments. Text message conversations where they begged for money. Email threads about Stacy's wedding planning, where they kept demanding more expensive options. The original contracts showing I'd paid all the deposits. The amended contracts Trevor and Stacy had signed, taking over financial responsibility. And the crown jewel, Mom's original text uninviting me from the wedding. Alan came over around noon with sandwiches and found me surrounded by printed documents. Jesus, there's a lot of evidence here, he said. 2 years of evidence I corrected. Every time I laid them out, every time they promised to pay me back, every time they treated me like their personal bank account. I keep good records. It took me 3 hours to write the post. I wanted it to be factual, devastating, and impossible to argue with. No emotion, no name-calling, just cold, hard documentation of exactly what kind of people my parents really were. I started by explaining that since my mother had decided to share her version of recent events, I thought it was time the family got the full story with actual proof. Then I laid it all out. Every single thing. The most damaging part was the timeline of the wedding situation. Screenshots of Stacy begging me to pay for everything. Trevor's condescending messages about being the provider. The contracts showing I'd paid thousands in deposits. The amended contracts they'd eagerly signed to take credit for the wedding. And finally, the uninvitation text from Mom. I clarified that I didn't steal anything. I paid exactly what I contractually agreed to pay. The fact that Trevor couldn't afford the wedding he so desperately wanted to take credit for wasn't theft. It was called financial reality. As for being jealous of their success, I was the one who'd been bankrolling their success for over 2 decades. The only thing I was jealous of was families who don't treat their relatives like ATM machines. I ended by announcing that I was done enabling financial irresponsibility and then being blamed when people have to face the consequences of their own choices. I posted it at 8 p.m. on a Saturday night. The response was immediate and brutal. Alan was refreshing the post every 30 seconds, giving me a play-by-play. Aunt Linda was calling my mom a liar. Uncle Mike was asking for my Venmo history with the family. My cousin Jessica posted, "Finally, someone tells the truth." Within 2 hours, the comment section had turned into a bloodbath. Extended family members were sharing their own stories of my parents asking them for money. Church friends were expressing shock at the documented financial manipulation. Even family friends I hadn't seen in years were coming out of the woodwork to share their own experiences with my parents' borrowing habits. The best comment came from my dad's own brother. "I've been wondering why you guys always seem to have money troubles despite Derek bailing you out constantly. Now I know where the money was really going. Carbo trips and fishing boats while your son pays your bills. Shameful." But the real damage came when Stacy's friends started commenting. Apparently, they'd been hearing for months about how Stacy's successful brother was paying for this lavish wedding. When they saw the evidence that Trevor had actually signed contracts taking financial responsibility, then couldn't afford to pay the bills. The story Stacy had been telling fell apart completely. Her friends were pointing out that she told them Trevor had everything handled, and I was just helping out with small stuff. They thought the park wedding was a last-minute venue change for aesthetic reasons. By Sunday morning, my parents had deleted their original post, but screenshots of both posts were circulating in family group chats and local Facebook groups. The damage was done and spreading. Mom called me around 10 a.m., crying. People were calling them liars and cheats. The pastor wanted to meet with them about their financial integrity. Dad's friends were avoiding him at work. I reminded her that maybe she should have thought about that before calling me a thief on social media. She insisted she was just hurt and upset. Didn't mean for it to get this big, but I pointed out she didn't mean to get caught. She begged me to take down the post, promising to make a public apology and tell everyone she was wrong. I told her the post stays up. People deserve to know the truth about what kind of people they really are. When she wailed that this was destroying their reputation, I told her good. Their reputation was built on lies. Anyway, Dad called an hour later with a different tone, angry instead of pleading. He accused me of crossing a line by airing family business in public, asking if I had no shame. I told him I had less shame than he did, apparently, since at least I was telling the truth. When he threatened me to take it down as his last warning, I asked what he'd do. Uninvite me from another wedding I'm paying for? He hung up. Tuesday brought the most satisfying development yet. Stacy called me sobbing. "Derek, Trevor left me. I wasn't expecting that." "What?" He said he can't handle the drama and the financial problems. He moved out yesterday. He said marrying into this family was a mistake. Trevor, the great provider, had cut and run the moment his new wife's family drama affected his precious reputation. The guy who was too good to be seen with me at his wedding had abandoned his wife 3 weeks after marrying her. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. And I actually was. Despite everything, I didn't want Stacy to get her heart broken. He said the Facebook stuff was embarrassing, and he didn't sign up for this kind of family dysfunction. He said he married me, not the whole family's problems. Did he take the BMW? Of course he took the BMW. He said it was in his name, so I couldn't do anything about it. Classic Trevor, talking big about being a provider until the providing got complicated. What are you going to do? I don't know. I can't afford the apartment on my own. Mom and Dad are too embarrassed to help because everyone knows about their money problems now. I might have to move back in with them. Sucks to suck. Stacy, are you going to help me? And there it was. After everything, the uninvitation, the public humiliation, calling me a thief, she still expected me to ride to the rescue. No, I told you the Bank of Derek was closed, but I'm your sister. You're also the person who decided I wasn't good enough to attend your wedding. She hung up crying, but this time I didn't feel bad about it. Alan came over that evening with drinks and takeout, finding me on my deck, actually relaxed for the first time in months. When he asked how it felt to watch the whole house of cards collapse, I told him it felt pretty great. Trevor had bylaid on Stacy. Mom and Dad were persona non grata in their social circle, and I was finally free from being their financial safety net. 6 months later, I heard through the family grapevine that Stacy was working 2 jobs and living with roommates. Trevor had apparently moved in with some woman from his office about a month after leaving Stacy. Mom and Dad had to find a new church because the gossip at their old one was too uncomfortable. Dad's fishing boat got repossessed. Mom had to get a part-time job at Target to help with bills. And me? I bought a house with a pool and a 3-car garage, paid cash. Turns out when you stop bankrolling other people's poor decisions, you have a lot more money for your own life. Alan helped me move in, and as we sat on my new deck drinking and watching the sunset, he raised his bottle in a toast. To the most expensive education in family dynamics ever delivered. Worth every penny, I replied. Sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away. Consider it a masterclass in respect. Story 2, it's been 12 years since I was last here, but this time everything was completely different. My wife, or rather ex-wife, had 3 days that changed everything the last time I was here. 2 of them were vividly remembered by both of us. On the first day, I provided her with hall pass, even though she didn't ask for it. I saw that she was interested in a guy at our hotel, and it seemed like it was love at first sight. Not sure if it was because of the relaxed environment, but I suggested it. We had never done anything like this before and didn't plan to do it again. The next and final highlight was sharing her with the same man. It was nothing like anything else we'd ever done together, and the next morning we didn't. It was a shame. We both felt closer than ever. As we ate breakfast, she said it was a special moment that we would remember together until death do us part. The third day, this day marked the end of our marriage, but let's not get stuck in the past. It's already behind us. I closed this sad chapter and put the book on the dusty shelf of my memory. I moved forward and finally met a woman who was right for me. I've been married to Monica for 5 years. She's a couple years younger than me and just a hot redhead beauty. When I saw her for the first time, I wanted to slap her upside the head. No, not because she made me angry. I saw her red hair and captivating green eyes in the rearview mirror of her car and immediately crashed into the back of her as we stopped in the morning rush hour traffic. We stopped at the curb and her door swung open. She cheerfully got out of the car. Redheads are famous for their fiery personalities. She took a deep breath, ready to start spitting fire at me, but I beat her to it. Raising my hands in surrender, I extinguished the flames before they even flared up in my direction. Sorry, this is entirely my fault. I will gladly pay for any damages and cover any costs for any reasonable inconvenience this may cause you, I said. This stopped her in her tracks, and her angry face softened as we both went to see what damage was visible. A visual inspection revealed 2 cracked license plates, but I insisted that she take the car to a reputable auto repair shop to make sure there was no unseen damage. I doubted that they were because we collided at such a speed that a pensioner walking with a sled frame would hardly be able to reach. Her face softened even more before a few words escaped what I considered kissable. Lips. And her eyes. They were simply emerald-colored black holes that seemed to be able to suck in all the surrounding atoms. Thanks for taking the blame. Last time this happened, he was a real idiot. He was more worried about scratching his Porsche. Let's just say my brother definitely discovered invisible damage to my car when I took it to his garage. And there it was, a wink and a smile at her little confession. We need to exchange numbers so I can tell you the cost. I unlocked my phone and handed it to her so she could add her number to my contacts. She returned the phone and I dialed her number, hearing it ring and realizing that she had my phone. She took a photo of her license plate, the front of our cars, and then me. I looked at her in bewilderment. Sorry, I should have asked before I took your picture in case you tried to wriggle out of paying, I said. Today is Tuesday. Do you think you can make an estimate by Saturday? She nodded as I busily typed on my phone. Okay, if you can get a copy and give it to me, say, at 8 o'clock in the evening. 8 in the evening? You're a little impudent. Maybe I'm leaving somewhere. Actually, I'm a risk taker. I've just booked a table for 2 at Porcilippo's in Canterbury during this time. I've never known a woman to turn down a quality Italian restaurant. Consider this an apology with no financial compensation required. Now she was smiling. My husband might not be happy if I go to dinner with a stranger. Then I'll change the booking to 3. Why on earth are you doing this? I can ask him how he feels every day when the happiest man on the planet wakes up with a beautiful woman like you. I opened the OpenTable app again to change my reservation when her hand touched mine. She looked at me, frowning in disbelief, and slowly shook her head. No, a table for 2 is good, thank you. No need to set me up. I know a great dish that can cook man's eggs in. I looked up at her remark as she turned and got into the car. She glanced at me with green eyes in the rearview mirror, shook her head, and drove off. If I'm not mistaken, I can say that she grinned like a Cheshire cat. On Saturday evening, we started a serious relationship. Like me, she was divorced and told me that her husband had left for someone else. They had no children and a rented house, so the divorce was easy. She said it hurt, but not as much as she expected, all things considered. I thought this was a strange remark and put it aside without thinking about what it might mean for our future relationship. Of course, we didn't stop at just dating. 18 months later, we tied the knot in a simple wedding ceremony. As our relationship developed, we learned more and more about each other. Monica was, to put it mildly, the most amazing woman on the planet. If it had come with a scorecard, it would have received full marks. Hot body, beautiful face, red hair, green eyes, impeccable sense of style, intelligence, wit, kindness, compassion, cooking skills are just some of her qualities. Yes, I missed one thing, our intimacy. If there was an Olympic award for this, Monica would deserve a gold medal. Although my ex-wife, until she fell, could compete with her, but ultimately Monica would win. Several years later, we were heading to bed. Then Monica told me how she ended up divorced. At school, she had a best friend, Ellie, and they were like sisters. They dated 2 guys as teenagers, and then Monica dumped Harry when they went to college. A few weeks later, Elle also left her boyfriend. And a few months later, things took a strange turn. Monica started dating Elle's boyfriend, and Lee started dating Monica's boyfriend. A short time passed, and both couples got married. Everything went as usual, each couple got married, everyone remained close friends and did a lot together. But this is where the problem started. They rented a villa in Ibiza, a clubbing hotspot for young Europeans. The sun was hot, flesh was on display, and the nightclub scene was wild. Under the influence of many cocktails, one night in a rented villa, they exchanged partners, just like old times. The problem was that Elle and Ben realized that they had made a big mistake. Each of them married someone other than the one they really loved. Even though he tried to hide it the next day, the decision was made. The exchange of partners continued until Monica stopped it, then secret connections began, and after a couple of months, they were in plain sight. Glances, flirting, light touches, and then they were caught in their marital bed. In Monica and Ben's bed. In reality, all 4 of them knew this would happen. It was just that no one was brave enough to say it until it was shown so clearly. This explained what she had said when we first met, that the end of her relationship hurt her, but not as much. As she expected, all things considered, but the next revelation came as a real shock. She admitted that she liked the change. It wasn't that it was bringing back anything from the past, it was just that she was enjoying love with someone other than her partner. She admitted that during one session, they were in the same room, on the same bed, and she tried things that a normal couple might not do together. When I asked her what it was, she looked down and said we'd discuss it another day. I opened up and told her my story in detail. Before that, she had heard a very condensed version. I told her that I was on vacation, that my wife was attracted to the lonely guy in room 106, and I gave her a 2-hour pass to the hall. This piqued her interest. Then I told her what happened later, how my ex-wife took to the threesome like a duck takes to water, and how I enjoyed the affair as much as she did. She rolled over onto her side, her curious green eyes looking at me intently as if eager to know more. You said she left you for someone else. Did she fall in love with him? You both had to be comfortable in your marriage to take the steps you did in the first place. What went wrong? I continued to tell her the story. The next morning we realized that we really liked what happened. It's true that it's not to everyone's taste, but it suited us. We were lying by the pool, relaxing, wondering where this would take us when two women walked past us, apparently teenagers, and we heard their mocking comment. I remember these words verbatim. That's that fat chick who was in the next room with two guys last night, no fucking morals. I continued. My ex, Mela, burst into tears and immediately returned to the room. She stood looking at herself, criticizing her body. In fact, there was nothing wrong with her. The curves and bumps were in their place, and her figure was beautiful. She looked at me with tears on her face and asked a question that touched her deeply, and which she has since perceived as a lie, despite the sincerity of my words. I remember saying, "Baby, you're not fat, trust me, you're perfect." She smiled, but it was just a facade, an attempt to hide the damage that comment had caused her. No woman wants to hear herself called fat, especially if it comes from another woman. From then on, everything went swimmingly until she was reduced to skin and bones, and I was powerless to change anything. At dinner that night, she put on a brave face, said the comment wouldn't hurt her, and ate her fill before disappearing into the ladies' room for 15 minutes. It didn't even occur to me that she might be forcing herself to get rid of what she'd eaten. Little did she know that this was the onset of bulimia, a mental disorder caused by an unpleasant comment that caused her to overeat, and then vomit. It took several weeks before I noticed she was sick, and another week before I realized she was dealing with the problem herself. When her weight dropped sharply, I forced her to see a doctor, but she managed everything. Several more weeks passed until a friend sent me a link to an article about the disease, and only then did I realize what was happening. Lots of tears. Despite losing pounds and looking too thin, she kept saying she was fat. I asked her to show me, and she stood in front of the mirror looking at herself naked. I had a photo of her in a bikini taken during our recent vacation. She denied, seeing only an ugly fat woman. It seemed that each of us saw our own images in this mirror. I described how she remained in the grip of despair until I decided to take measures that I thought would help her get out of this dark hole. I threatened to leave if she didn't seek professional help, but all I achieved was to put a noose around the neck of our marriage. It was enough to pull the lever, and it broke off in less than 6 months. She was indignant, thinking that I was trying to blackmail her, not understanding how my heart broke watching a beautiful woman turn into a walking skeleton. I loved her, I would suffer for her sake, but there are things that the laws of nature do not allow to be corrected. My heart was breaking. If this had been an isolated incident, like a one-night stand with someone else, I would have known what I needed to do to get my wife back if I wanted to do it. But I was lost in this, and I needed help. And then Michael appeared. Our relationship went from bad to worse until I came home from work and saw the skeleton that was once my wife sitting on the couch next to Michael, who was leading her self-help group. After a difficult conversation, she left with Michael. Thus, our marriage ended. This was our way of life, open and honest. Monica and I shared all our thoughts and feelings. We both went through disappointments in relationships and believed that we were simply unlucky in love at a certain point in our lives. In addition to her love for me, Monica had another hobby: competitions. She took part in various competitions in magazines, television, and the internet, where you could participate for free or for a nominal fee. She even won several times, and at the age of 18, she was lucky and won a car. This became an incentive for her to take further action. One Saturday morning, she told me that she had won an all-inclusive holiday to Maspalomas in Gran Canaria, the same place where my marriage had previously broken down. Even though it was a different hotel, I still felt a little uneasy because of the past memories. We stayed at the luxurious Hotel Riu Palace, located on the edge of dunes, similar to the Sahara Desert. Monica chose several areas with nudist beaches, and we went there on the first day. The beaches were spacious, and there were sun loungers next to huts where you could order food and drinks. We relaxed on sun loungers, naked, slathering on sunscreen and enjoying the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. There were a lot of people on the beach, mostly couples, enjoying their nakedness, having fun and relaxing carefree. Standing out among them were Jessica and John, a couple with athletic bodies and a genuine passion for outdoor activities. Their presence was an integral part of the atmosphere that filled the beach with freedom and joy. We became friends by exchanging candid stories. They, having married young, continued to experience the same passion as at the beginning of the relationship, but with a more liberal view of the world. The conversation turned to Monica's and my story, how we met, and how our relationship developed. We didn't go into great detail, but it was clear that our approach to love and relationships was not traditional. As I shared my story, their gazes seemed to briefly meet, but we didn't say anything. Together, we found solace in understanding and supporting each other against the backdrop of the gentle rays of the sun and the sound of the waves. We discussed where we were staying and found out it was a place called Venus Star is an adult-themed resort. When we found out that this meant triple X, it caused us to look surprised, although none of us expressed our surprise out loud. We spent the next few hours enjoying the atmosphere of relaxation, drinking, talking, sunbathing and swimming in the sea, fighting the waves. At some point the wave picked up Jessica and she suddenly rushed towards me, hugging my waist. Our lips met in a kiss before we were pulled back into the wave. As we rose to our feet, I noticed that Monica and John had moved on and remained safe and sound. John was obviously captivated by Monica, and they were momentarily locked in a passionate kiss and embrace. After that, Monica smiled at me and took a dive, followed by John. A little later, I felt Monica's hands on my hips as she emerged from the water and stood in front of me. Her look confirmed that she was my Monica, but at that moment she seemed like some kind of mysterious sea siren. We returned to our sun loungers to dry off and prepare to head back to our hotels. Knowing that we were happy together, they invited us to join them later in the evening at the bar. And yes, it was a swingers bar. After exchanging phone numbers, the girls said that we would let them know. However, from Monica's expression when she looked at me, I knew that we were both intrigued and ready for new adventures. We were planning to join. As we walked back to the hotel, we both agreed that it was a pleasant and slightly unexpected meeting that made the day great. Holding each other's hands, we walked along the path leading to the beach. Suddenly, Monica turned to me. "Darling, did you like what happened there? I don't see anything wrong with it. But if we continue, you know where this can lead, right?" I stopped and turned her towards me. Her breathing became faster, and I felt that it was not just from walking. Her eyes looked at me as if they could speak on their own. I kissed her gently for a few seconds before backing away a little. "I like where this could lead to, but let's give our feelings some time to cool down before we make any decisions, okay?" I looked at her, and my words were interrupted by a gentle, charming kiss. We continued our way to the hotel, holding hands. Returning to the room, we took a shower together. Oh, Monica, what the hell just happened? The water was still falling on us, but I noticed that it had taken on a pink tint as it flowed off my body. Monica looked at me in bewilderment, her eyes between the splashes turned to my neck, and she covered her mouth with her hands. After getting out of the shower, I wiped the steam off the mirror. There was a bite mark on the skin of my collarbone. Light blood flowed where Monica's teeth had broken my skin a little. I was amazed that I did not feel this incident. The adrenaline, dopamine, and oxytocin released during our passionate time in the shower should have numbed the pain I should have felt. I felt Monica's arms wrap around me as she approached me from behind, and an oops sound came from her mouth, followed by a sexy giggle. We dried off and fell onto the bed, quickly falling asleep in each other's arms. When I woke up a couple of hours later, I touched the mark she left, and it was a little painful. Over the next hour, as we got ready, I noticed that Monica wanted to say something but was holding back. This was the first time in our relationship. Over dinner, I couldn't help but admire my wife. The waiters, as usual, served us diligently, literally vying for the right to bring a new dish or drink. The young waiter helped set Monica down, and his eyes widened when he accidentally looked under her dress, noticing her lack of a bra. After the first course, I decided to talk to her. "Monica, something is bothering you. Can you tell me? Remember we talked about our partner exchange? I promised to share the details later." I nodded, smiling. "I think now is the time. Remember when I said that we did something special that was unusual for us?" I nodded again, intrigued. "Did you kiss Elle and two? Did you like it, Monica?" She blushed, her green eyes drawing me in, her breathing slowing as she approached me across the table, and I followed, inches closer. We barely reached each other, our lips barely touching as we began to kiss tenderly. Physically, it was a light kiss, soft and gentle. Mentally, he was passionate, as if we were in the very center of ancient Babylon. "Have you finished talking to Jessica and John yet?" "Yes, I told them that we'll meet at Comeback Bar at 10 p.m. It's not far, we just have to walk up the road about half a mile, then go up to the second floor." "I see. But how far are we going to go into this rabbit hole, Monica? If we go all the way, then you know what awaits us." "Yes, I saw the way you look at Jessica. I'm not offended, I put on a show myself, and John reacted the same way. It would be strange if you both didn't react that way. When we sat there naked today, I wanted to repeat the feeling of elation that I felt with Elle and Gary and Ben. But this time, I want to experience it with you." Her face glowed with excitement, and the thought of what she was offering gave me an idea. "Do you mind if I play with Jessica? I feel as comfortable with you as I always have, just like when we first met." "I'll watch with pleasure if you enjoy it. After all, it's just a fitness machine." During dinner, her phone rang. Several times, she answered messages. At one point, her eyes widened and she laughed. When I asked what was going on, she simply said that I would find out about everything later, and it would be a pleasant surprise, but she needed to go back to the room before we left. After dinner, she disappeared into our room and I went into the bar. When she returned, her makeup had been freshened and her lips, covered in red gloss, looked especially seductive. The green velvet dress, hugging her body and emphasizing her curves, attracted glances with its sexuality. It was asymmetrical, with a full sleeve on one side and a small spaghetti strap on the other. The dress was decorated with rhinestones and pleating, and I was surprised that she didn't start a fire as she walked by. She looked amazingly attractive. I also noticed that she had swapped out her small clutch for a larger purse. "Is your other purse broken?" I asked. She stopped and kissed me at the bar before we went outside. Pressing her ear to my ear, she whispered, "Oh no, baby, it's just that Jessica and John couldn't contain their passion in their room." This was said almost as a joke, but I understood that this might be my last chance to refuse. Remembering Jessica's hot body, I felt that I wanted to join it at least once. As for Monica's plans, I already went through this in my last marriage. We were both calm about what was likely to happen that evening. We headed to the Cita Center, which turned out to be a typical Spanish shopping complex. Inside, there were many restaurants, shops with a variety of goods, as well as many bars, mostly German. The overall appearance of the center looked tired, likely due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has hit hard and forced many tenants to close. However, advertisements inside the complex indicated that bars and clubs for swingers were plentiful. We later found out that this was one of the largest swingers areas in Europe. On the ground floor, we noticed a sign for the bar, Comeback. At first, he seemed ordinary, giving nothing away about his specificity. When we arrived, Jessica saw us first and screamed with joy. Monica came over to hug her, and I shook John's hand. After a short greeting, he smiled and nodded his head, indicating for me to look to the right. Turning around, I saw how the girls kissed passionately, as if they had forgotten about us. After laughing, they fixed their makeup, which had suffered a little from the passionate kiss. They then offered to do the same with us and John. I was a little worried about the tense atmosphere in the air, but to my relief, the bar was calm. About 100 people gathered here, joking, talking, and flirting. As the evening went on, people moved around the bar, and I found myself with John and a few other guys discussing sports. Our girls seemed to be exchanging messages while concentrating on their phones. This made me curious, but I did not interfere. When Monica noticed my gaze, she winked at me and stuck out her tongue playfully. While I was at the gentlemen's club, the liquor I had consumed began to take its toll. When I returned to our group, John and the girls seemed to be having an interesting conversation, but it was interrupted when I entered. To diffuse the situation, I interjected, "Hey, don't stop talking now that I'm back, unless you're talking about Bloody Love Island. Monica knows it's not my thing." This caused a little laughter, but underneath there was something tense. For the first time, I felt like something was going on, something where I didn't fit in. Then John spoke. "Sorry for the interruption. We're a little late. We were planning to meet our old friends, Deborah and Greg, at the club tonight. It's their last night here, and we agreed to meet up if they were free. However, they were unavailable all day, so Howie went on a boat trip and their phone didn't have a signal. If you want, you can join us." Monica interrupted his sentence. "Instead of the four of us, there will be six, if everyone agrees, of course. We have already said that we are not against it, but if you don't like it, then this is not a problem. We can just look into the club, see how it is there, and make a decision. I love the atmosphere here, and I'd like to see what it's like behind closed doors, so to speak." "No, I agree. Let's meet this couple. 7, 8, why not?" They all laughed and smiled, but I felt that it was not just that. It was something more. Maybe they were afraid that I wouldn't be happy about our time being stolen by another couple. We finished our drinks and went down 2 flights of stairs to the basement where the Secrets Club was located. We paid the entrance fee and went inside. Yes, it was a completely different place, much more depraved than what we saw above. At first glance, it looked like a small nightclub. The large bar was located slightly away from the center, with a dance floor on one side where the crowd danced to heavy club rhythms. On the other side, in the corner, there were lockers for clothes, and here everything became noticeably different from a regular club. People there changed clothes, women put on underwear, and men took off their clothes. Each locker seemed to have 2 towels, and they were taken and disappeared into an area designated couples only under the watchful eye of a security guard. When I asked John why a security guard was needed, he replied that it was to keep single men out. He then pointed across the club to a section where, in his words, anything is possible. As he spoke, I watched in amazement as the couple headed there. He noticed my bewilderment and explained what he had just seen. "You already know how it works, buddy," he said as we sat down at the table. "The only difference is that some of these girls here can be quite persistent." He winked at me, and I turned to see the girls already on the dance floor and wasting no time in moving sensually to the catchy music. By the time we ordered drinks, they were already dragging us to the dance floor, changing between us and trying to excite us with lewd dancing or passionate kisses. It seemed that today they were performing some kind of task. Suddenly Jessica stopped, waving her arms in the air to attract attention. I saw a couple enter the hall and they noticed her. I assumed it was Greg and Deborah. They approached, John, Jessica, Greg, and Deborah hugged, and then, with the music blaring, they introduced us to each other. Even in the semi-darkness, I noticed that the others were trying to steal glances in my direction when I kissed Deborah on the cheek during introductions. When we parted, she looked into my eyes, smiling coyly. Without having time to say anything more, the girls grabbed her hand and carried her to the cabinets, and at that time we ordered another portion. Almost spilled the drink when the girls returned. Jessica only had black knee socks and heels, but Monica really shocked me. She was wearing a stretched luminous dress that could fit through the eye of a needle, just like thin paper. I understood why she needed a bigger bag. Deborah followed them. Her stockings and black stilettos complemented her striking, dressy footwear. I wanted to admire women. They were ideal examples of femininity. By this point, the dance floor was just full of writhing bodies. Me, John, and Greg went to the bar while the girls continued to dance as if they were performing at a strip club. Jessica walked up to John and started talking to him, and he nodded and returned to Greg and me. D-Day, gentlemen, John said as we approached the girls. The girls want us to take off our clothes and join them in the couples area. We went to change and returned to the girls, after which we all headed to the couples area. The music, although still loud, was now muffled due to the walls separating the two sections of the club. The main area was dimly lit. Just inside the entrance was a raised rectangular bed about 20 feet long, on which three couples were seriously making out with each other. There were also other smaller beds, as well as various pieces of furniture intended for various pleasures. A young Spanish couple demonstrated this vividly while sitting on a sun lounger. We decided to explore the club and headed to the smaller autonomous zone. Like the main room, there was a long rectangular bed on which 5 couples could play. Adjoining it were 4 small rooms, locked with a key. One of them was occupied, the rest were open. Each of them had a king-size bed and a couple of chairs. I didn't notice that Jessica had disappeared at that time. When she returned, she was holding a glass with pieces of folded paper in it. "It's Deborah and Greg's last night, so I'm suggesting a little game if you're all up for it," Jessica announced. Everyone except me instantly nodded in agreement. "What kind of game is this, Jessica?" I asked. "Oh, you'll see. This will be interesting. All or nothing. Don't you agree?" I agreed with some doubt. Why did everyone seem to know what was going on except me? Something was bothering me, and I intended to find out from Monica what was going on. To avoid attracting too much attention, I nodded in agreement. Jessica smiled before announcing the rules. "Okay, we're going to play at the hall pass. The 3 pieces of paper inside this glass are our 3 names. Each of you chooses one of them, and the one whose name you choose will spend an hour in a room with that person, and then we will all go out together and lie down on the big bed." The others were delighted, but I had serious doubts. Asking the others to wait, I pulled Monica into the room. "Monica, I have a few questions for you about this game. It might be a bad idea." She put a finger to my lips to silence me, and then gently pressed her lips to mine, hugging me tightly and pulling away a little. "Please, Donovan, don't say anything else. Just enjoy the moment. It's just for an hour, no more, no less. Even if I paid for it, you'd still choose my damn name." I sighed and nodded in agreement, although I felt that something was wrong. We walked outside and Monica nodded, smiling at the others. Their happy smiles returned to their faces, and the party atmosphere became joyful again. "Now, Donovan, you're new, so you get to pick first. If you pick Monica, you can pick her again," Jessica announced. I reached out and pulled out a piece of paper with the name Deborah. This happened, what I was afraid of, what I didn't want. I wanted to object to Monica, but she again put her finger on my lips to silence me, kissed me, and then directed me into the room. Deborah followed me and closed the door. I turned around, she was smiling, but in her eyes I caught some anxiety. "Hey, Mayla, do you prefer your middle name now?" She didn't answer but simply stepped forward, wrapped her arms around my neck, and pulled me towards her for a tender kiss. A kaleidoscope of emotions flashed through my head. When you meet again after a long time, a passionate kiss is like a dive into the past, like the resurfacing of old feelings and memories. We both shared so many moments together that it was more than just a kiss. It was a memory of our love, of how I once adored this woman with all my heart and soul. "Mayla, I can't afford to do that. It would be a betrayal of Monica, do you understand me?" She looked at me with a smile and calmness. "Please call me Deborah. Mila is a thing of the past. Can I tell you a little secret?" I nodded slowly. "Monica knows about me, and this was all planned so that we would end up here together now. This passage into the club was intended just for us." It amazed me. How the hell could Monica know about this? Deborah must have realized that I was uncomfortable in this situation, but how did my wife know? This is just ridiculous. I started to move towards the door, but Deborah grabbed my arm. "Please stay, Donovan, at least to talk. I never stopped loving you, but I'm not here to interfere with your marriage. Monica, she's amazing. But you were once my husband, and when we separated, I saw how our feeling with you was fading, and it destroyed me. I had to let you go for the sake of your happiness. I never doubted that someone would come and see the amazing man with whom I fell in love, married, and still have love for him." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she held me close to her, so close that her voice became a soft whisper in my ear. "I prayed that one day I would have a chance to see you, to tell you that I was sorry for turning to someone else when you did everything you could to save me. I am grateful to you for letting me go without trying to fight. I was too weak by then, my mind. You know, it was a complete mess, and it was several months before I completely hit rock bottom and found a way out. The first shock that made me try to look at my life rationally came when one of the women who had been attending a self-help group for several months stopped coming, and a few months later we learned that she had died due to complications associated with her illness. I felt like I could be next, and my therapist tried different methods to help me. Finally, she suggested that I bury Melu and let Debbie take center stage. She emphasized that Debbie didn't want to be Melu, and becoming Debbie gave the person in front of you the opportunity to be free of illness. Using my middle name helped me separate myself from the previous personality. Slowly but surely, I found a way to overcome bulimia. But along the way, I already lost you, and that was the most painful part of the whole experience. I didn't care that I still looked like a walking skeleton. I didn't have my self-caring person in my life. I needed to find out what happened to Michael. Michael helped me, but only to a certain point. Michael was attracted to a woman who needed help. It was his perversion in a sense. Within 6 months, I found a way out and I was no longer attracted to him. In fact, I was never attracted to him, but at the moment we separated, he was aware of my condition, and this was the basis of his attraction. You should know that I was never physically unfaithful to you. Physically, I gave myself completely to Michael only after we broke up, and several months passed before I took that final step, giving him my body. Emotionally, Michael and there was a weak connection before we broke up, but it was weak. I didn't want to hurt you. If you think that the lack of sexual connection between you and me was because of Michael, then it's just my physical and emotional state that took all the desire from me. It was never directed anywhere else. I nodded, letting her know that I agreed with her statement. I was looking for you. One day I walked into that bar you frequented. I saw you with a woman dancing. You looked so happy and content that I couldn't interfere in your life after we turned into shit, so I left, vowing that I would not create any storms in your life, and here I am and I'm glad. So how does Monica know who you are? Did you contact her? Didn't me? SHH, just hold me for a few moments. This is not at all what you expect. I hugged her, feeling her head rest on my shoulder, and then felt small kisses as she began to move up my shoulder to my neck, then to my lips. Our lips connected again, and our tongues explored the familiar contours. As I pulled away, I felt an internal rupture. I wanted this, but in my mind I saw Monica's burning green eyes judging me. We separated and sat on the bed. Deborah saw that I was trying to decide what to do. I was introduced to Monica via WhatsApp today. As you were discussing life with Jessica and John on the beach, they suddenly realized that your story is similar to mine and that we were once husband and wife. They are very good friends with Greg and me, so they informed me that you are here and with them. I had a conversation with Greg, by the way. You'll like him, he's so much like you in so many ways. I guess I'm attracted to the same type. I met Greg at work when I started gaining weight and we started dating. You know me, I told him everything and he accepted it without problems. A couple of years later we got married. So, you're obviously in a scene with Jessica and John. Did Greg introduce you to them? No, I was honest with him from the very beginning, and he knew what we did on that vacation. One night out of the blue, he asked me what it was like to share my body with another man, without a husband, and then with 2 men. I think he was a little afraid that I might be free and without fantasy. But I explained that the first experience without you was a one-time thing that should not be repeated. As for what the 3 of us shared, I admitted that then it was so deep. It sank into my soul that the taboo thrill of what I was doing and the incredible emotions combined with the physical action were incredible, and Greg didn't react, and the topic didn't come up for months. One night after making love, Greg took out his tablet and showed me the Swingers app. It was amazing. I had no idea how many people are passionate about this lifestyle. What struck me most was the ability to see who was nearby by distance. There were about 100 people within a 1-mile radius, so we went on a trip together. It all started in chat rooms, then we went on a date with a couple which ended with kissing and petting at their house. They suggested we go to a local club, they had themed events, and Halloween was on the line, so we went. That night was amazing. If on the date we plunged headlong, then that night we dived from the highest board. After that, we began to lead a lifestyle that suits us. Jessica texted me earlier, and she also told Monica that I was here. With her permission, we started a group, and we messaged each other all day. When I spoke to Greg, he wanted some time to think about meeting you. He spoke to John, and John assured him that it was very obvious that you were so in love with Monica that there would be no risk. You also made it clear that you didn't hate me. He knew that I felt like I had let you down and having received a chance to change your last impression of me, from that sad meeting with Michael at our house to an hour-long pass to spend time with you and eliminate that last meeting. Her eyes sparkled as she looked at me, and the moisture from her tears made her look sultry, even with her eye makeup a little smudged. Suddenly, she started giggling. "What's so funny? Didn't you think it was strange that I picked your name out of the glass? I prayed that I wouldn't choose you, but it seems like fate decreed that we ended up together." The giggles turned to laughter. Deborah pulled herself together and looked at me, shaking her head. "Fate has nothing to do with it. Jessica wrote my name on all 3 pieces of paper. I started laughing too. How could I not notice?" When we stopped laughing, Deborah looked at me and I could still read her. The shape of her lips, the lust in her eyes, and the tension in her facial muscles told me what she wanted. She wanted. When I looked at her, it seemed to me that she looked better than before her illness. She had noticeably tightened up. It's such a strange feeling, amazing. When we lie here, my mind is just filled with thoughts of what awaits us, where we are going, even before we do it. It's so strange but so familiar. It's like driving on a bicycle. Once you know how it's done, you'll never forget. I raised my eyebrows at her. "Are you calling me a bicycle?" We both laughed as she shook her head. "Not today, Mark. We all agreed that this would be a one-time thing if that's okay with you." As we kissed, memories of us making love flashed through my head. The first time was in the backseat of my car on a country road, when I put on a lavish show for Monica's birthday, booking a room at the St. Pancras Renaissance Hotel in London, champagne and flowers, spending a lot of money compared to my income then, and of course our time here in Gran Canaria. I rolled over next to her, and she cuddled up to me, hugging me with one leg. Then she started sobbing. I tried to move to look at her, but she answered in a barely audible voice. "Please stay still and hold me. Let me just be here, at least for the last time," she whispered silently. I understood her words. What was between us was gone, and this instant connection gave us the opportunity to return to the happy moments of the past while we were both still able to feel it. We closed the door to the past, sharing a long, extinct passion. We lay there for about 15 minutes until we came to our senses. I began to wonder what awaited us next once we emerged from this temporary shelter where we had been living for the last hour. How will Monica and Greg react to this? The job is done, and in a few minutes, we will know what will happen next. We got out of bed, taking 2 towels with us. It seems to be common practice to wipe down the bed after use. I grabbed some spray and some paper towels to quickly tidy up the bed, and then we opened the door. But the sight that greeted us was completely unexpected. Deborah smiled mischievously at our surprise. On the huge bed located near our room, Monica and Jessica stood on all fours opposite each other, trying to continue the passionate kiss. The only problem was that Jessica had Greg on his knees, and John was behind Monica, both trying to make the best of it. When they noticed us, they stopped and dispersed. Monica climbed off the bed and smiled at me with a hint of some hesitation. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Deborah in advance. When she offered to give me a temporary pass to the gym, I agreed without hesitation. But if I had known in advance that Deborah would be here, you might have avoided it, but in case something went wrong. Now kiss me." I kissed my wife. I should have realized that there might be a slightly different taste on her lips. Greg and Deborah repeated our movements until they pulled away from each other. Monica walked up to Deborah and looked into her eyes. A moment later, her hands clasped Deborah's head, and they kissed, passionately, merging in their embrace for about a minute. While this was happening, Greg walked up to me, smiled, and extended his hand. We shook hands. "Nice to meet you, Donovan. I apologize for the cloak and dagger analogy earlier. I don't accept such things, but perhaps in this case it was appropriate." It helped Deborah free herself from the weight that was weighing on her like an albatross. Guilt for leaving you and watching you suffer helplessly. She sincerely wants your suffering to end. This guilt made her feel terrible for leaving. "I know you tried, and I am very grateful to you for letting her go and supporting her in this decision. When she found out you were here, she felt like she had a chance to make things right, at least to some extent. I didn't know what was going on behind the door, but I don't mind what happened." He laughed. Lux smiled on me too. "Monica is an amazing woman. Like Medusa, those eyes penetrate the soul and leave a mark. She definitely turned a part of me into stone and then masterfully used it." We both smiled. Deborah was right. I liked Greg and I understood why she was attracted to him. The girls approached holding hands. Monica took the floor. "Deborah has something that belongs to me, and I want it back." The rest of the night was like no other. We left the club at 4 in the morning, completely both physically and mentally tired. The sexual excitement we felt was incredible, and we both knew it was something we would never experience again. The next morning we woke up and lay in bed hugging each other. Green eyes sparkled like emeralds when we hugged. Did we feel shame? No. Repentance? No. Regret about our actions towards others? No. We went into this with our eyes open, although my vision was a little clouded by the true nature of what might happen. Monica assured me that she was fine. Yes, of course, some part of her was scared when I walked into the room, but she said it was a natural feeling. The main thing is that we loved each other, and such games require honesty. Except for cases when your wife secretly sets you up with your ex, and unconditional trust in each other. Considering that we have already encountered this in our previous relationships, we have already tasted the forbidden fruit, conscious sexual intercourse with others. For some, our lifestyle may seem disgusting, but that's normal. Everyone is different. Just accept that we are happy in our skin. Will we do this again? Monica is already looking at flights and hotels for next year. Story 3. I was standing at the airport with my suitcases, waiting for my son with tickets for our family vacation, when he called. "Dad, we're already on the plane. You're not coming." I heard Olivia, his wife, giggling softly in the phone. "We'll finally have a vacation without this old man." My hands were trembling with resentment, but at that moment I realized that they would regret it. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I stood in the middle of Portland International Airport, the terminal buzzing like a hive. My old suitcase, its handle worn smooth from years of use, sat heavy by my feet. The air smelled of burnt coffee from a nearby kiosk, and a garbled voice crackled over the loudspeaker, announcing a flight to Seattle. I checked my watch. 9:17 a.m. Liam should have been here by now, tickets in hand, ready for our family vacation to Hawaii. My fingers tapped nervously against my phone, the screen blank. Where was he? I shifted my weight, the ache in my knees reminding me of my 67 years. The crowd surged around me, a woman dragging a toddler, a businessman barking into his earpiece, a group of teenagers laughing over their phones. I scanned their faces, searching for Liam's familiar jawline, his quick stride. Nothing. My stomach twisted, but I pushed it down. He was probably stuck in traffic. Or maybe Olivia had slowed him down. She was always fussing over her makeup or her outfits. The phone buzzed in my hand, sharp and sudden. Liam's name lit up the screen. I exhaled, relief flooding me, and pressed it to my ear. "Hey, son, where are you?" "I've been waiting by the check-in desks." A pause, too long. Then his voice, flat and cold, cut through the line. "Dad, we're already on the plane. You're not coming." My breath caught like someone had punched me in the chest. The terminal's noise faded, the world narrowing to the phone pressed against my ear. What do you mean I'm not coming?" My voice cracked, betraying me. I gripped the suitcase handle, the leather creaking under my fingers. Another pause. Then Olivia's voice, soft and venomous, slipped through the background. "We'll finally have a vacation without this old man." A giggle followed, sharp as a blade. My hands trembled, the phone nearly slipping from my grip. I opened my mouth to speak, but Liam cut me off. "Look, Dad, it's better this way. You just slow us down. We'll talk when we're back." The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, its blank screen staring back at me. The terminal roared back to life, announcements, footsteps, laughter, but it felt distant, like I was underwater. My chest burned, a mix of shock and rage. They were on the plane. The plane I'd paid for. The vacation I'd planned down to the last detail, dreaming of sunlit beaches and my son's rare smile. And they'd left me behind like I was nothing. Olivia's words echoed in my skull. Without this old man. I forced my legs to move, dragging the suitcase behind me. Its wheels squeaked, a pathetic sound against the polished floor. People parted around me, their faces a blur. I passed the coffee kiosk, the scent now sour in my nose, and headed for the exit. My fingers fumbled in my coat pocket, brushing against the house keys I'd tucked there that morning. Cold metal, solid and real, unlike my son's promises. Outside, the air was sharp, April's chill biting through my jacket. A line of yellow taxis idled at the curb, their drivers chatting in clusters. I raised a hand and one peeled away, pulling up beside me. The driver, a wiry man with a graying beard, hopped out and grabbed my suitcase. "Rough morning?" he asked, tossing the bag into the trunk. I didn't answer, just slid into the back seat. The door slammed shut, sealing me in with the faint smell of pine air freshener. My hands were still shaking, knuckles white as I clenched them in my lap. Olivia's giggle played on a loop in my head, each note fueling the fire in my chest. They thought they could humiliate me, discard me like an old coat, but they were wrong. The driver climbed in and glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Hey buddy, you okay? Where we headed?" I stared out the window, the airport shrinking behind us. My reflection flickered in the glass, gray hair, lined face, eyes harder than I'd ever seen them. They'd regret this, all of it. "Kinda need a destination," the driver said, his voice light but curious. I unclenched my fists, the keys in my pocket digging into my thigh. "Home," I said, my voice low and steady. "Take me home." The taxi hummed along the highway, rain streaking the windows like tears. Portland's skyline blurred in the distance, a gray smear against the April sky. I sat in the back seat, my hands folded tightly in my lap, the house keys in my pocket pressing into my thigh. The driver's radio played a soft jazz tune, barely audible over the patter of rain and the occasional squeak of the wipers. The air smelled of warm leather and faint cigarette smoke clinging to the seats. I stared at the water sliding down the glass, my mind replaying Liam's voice, "You're not coming." "Hey, you sure you're okay back there?" The driver's voice broke through, warm but cautious. I glanced at the rearview mirror, catching his eyes, brown, creased with concern, framed by a shock of silver hair. His name tag, pinned to a faded jacket, read Frank. "Fine," I muttered, my voice rougher than I meant. I didn't want to talk, not to him, not to anyone. But Frank wasn't the type to let silence linger. "Long day, huh? Airport's a madhouse this time of year." He chuckled, adjusting his grip on the wheel. "Dropping folks off, picking them up makes me miss my kids, you know. They're grown now, scattered across the country. You got family waiting at home." My jaw tightened. Family. The word stung, sharp as a fresh cut. I thought of Liam's cold tone, Olivia's mocking giggle. My fingers curled around the keys in my pocket, their edges biting into my palm. "Something like that," I said, staring out the window. Frank didn't push, but his question hung in the air, stirring memories I didn't want. Liam at 20, his eyes bright as I handed him the keys to his first car, bought with my overtime checks. The way he'd grinned, promising to make me proud. Or the day I paid for his wedding, watching Olivia glide down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my monthly pension. She'd barely thanked me, her smile tight as she whispered to Liam about the old-fashioned venue. My house, the one they lived in rent-free, was old-fashioned too, according to her. I'd heard her say it last month, her voice dripping with disdain as she stood in my kitchen, sipping my coffee. I shifted in the seat, the leather creaking under me. The rain was heavier now, drumming against the roof. I thought of all I'd given them, college tuition, car repairs, the down payment for their honeymoon. And for what? So they could leave me stranded in an airport, laughing like I was some burden they'd finally shed. "You ever feel like you gave too much?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, low and raw. Frank glanced back, his brow furrowing, to family. "Hell, all the time. Gave my daughter my old truck when she moved to Seattle. She sold it a month later, didn't even tell me." He shook his head, but his tone stayed light. "But that's how it goes, right? You give 'cause you love, em. Doesn't always come back the way you hope." I nodded, my throat tight. Love. I'd loved Liam fiercely, even when he started pulling away, his calls growing shorter, his visits rare. I told myself it was just life, marriage, work, Olivia. But now I saw it clearly. Every sacrifice, every dollar had been a rope they'd used to tie me down, to keep me useful until they didn't need me anymore. The taxi slowed, turning into my neighborhood. The houses here were tidy, their lawns clipped, but the familiarity felt hollow. I leaned my head against the window, the glass cool against my temple. Olivia's voice echoed again, "Without this old man." My chest burned, but beneath the hurt something else stirred, something hard and unyielding, like the keys in my hand. Frank pulled up to my house, the tires crunching on the wet gravel drive. The two-story colonial loomed ahead, its white paint peeling at the edges, the front porch sagging under years of neglect. My house, my life's work, and they thought they could take it from me. "Home sweet home," Frank said, turning to face me. "That'll be $28.50. I handed him a crumpled $30, waving off the change. "Keep it," I said, my voice steadier now. I stepped out, the rain soaking my coat, and grabbed my suitcase from the trunk. The taxi's engine idled as I stood there, staring at the front door. My fingers closed around the keys, their weight grounding me. Frank leaned out his window. "Take care, all right? Family stuff, it's never as bad as it seems." I didn't answer, just gave a curt nod. He drove off, the taillights fading into the rain. I turned to the house, my house, the one I'd built for a family that no longer existed. The keys gleamed faintly in my hand, slick with rain. My eyes narrowed, a quiet resolve settling in my bones. They'd see soon enough. I'd make sure of it. The front door creaked as I pushed it open, the familiar groan echoing in the quiet house. I dropped my suitcase by the threshold, its thud muffled by the faded rug. The air inside smelled of stale coffee and the faint lavender of the cleaner I'd used last week. My house, 2 stories of chipped paint and creaky floors, every inch earned through decades of long shifts and careful saving. Now it felt like a museum of mistakes, each room holding memories of a family that had turned its back on me. I shuffled to the kitchen, my shoes scuffing the hardwood. The morning's chill clung to my coat, but I didn't bother hanging it up. I flicked on the coffee maker, its low hum filling the silence. While it gurgled, I sank into the old armchair by the window, the springs groaning under my weight. A shelf across the room held family photos, Liam as a boy, grinning with a missing tooth, our fishing trip when he was 15, his wedding day where I'd stood proud, ignoring Olivia's tight smile. I stared at the frames, my chest tight. How had it come to this? Liam's voice rang in my head, cold and final, "You're not coming." Olivia's giggle followed, sharp and cruel. "Without this old man." My fingers twitched, itching to smash something, but I gripped the armrests instead, the wood smooth under my palms. I'd given them everything, college, cars, a roof over their heads, and they'd repaid me with a phone call and a laugh. I stood, pacing the kitchen, my steps heavy. The coffee maker beeped, but I ignored it, my eyes drifting to the keys I'd tossed on the counter. They glinted under the fluorescent light, small but solid. A reminder, this was my house, my life. I wasn't the burden they thought I was. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts. The bank's number stared back at me, a quiet temptation. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I hesitated. Not yet. I needed to think, to plan. I wasn't Liam, acting on impulse, or Olivia, scheming behind fake smiles. Whatever I did, it would be deliberate, fair, they'd feel it. I wandered to the living room, my hand brushing the back of the couch where Liam used to sprawl, demanding money for some new gadget. "Dad, you don't get it," he'd say, rolling his eyes when I suggested saving. Olivia was worse, her complaints slicing like paper cuts. "This house is so dated," she'd said once, sipping wine I'd paid for. "You should renovate." As if I hadn't poured my life into these walls. I stopped by the fireplace, my gaze landing on another photo, Liam and me at his graduation. I'd worked double shifts to cover his tuition, never complaining. He'd hugged me that day, promising to make me proud. A lie, I saw now. My throat burned, but I swallowed it down. No tears, not for them. I thought of their voices in the airport, the ease with which they'd cut me out. They thought I was weak, a pushover who'd keep giving no matter what. They were wrong. I wasn't that man anymore. The man who'd stood in that terminal, shocked and trembling, was gone. In his place was someone else, someone who wouldn't let this go unanswered. I crossed to the window, the curtains rough against my fingers as I pushed them aside. The front yard stretched out, the grass patchy from neglect. Beyond it, the neighborhood was quiet, the rain slowing to a drizzle. I could see Elaine's house next door, her porch light glowing faintly. She'd understand, maybe. She'd lost her husband, faced her own betrayals. But this wasn't her fight. It was mine. My reflection stared back from the glass, eyes sharp and unyielding. I thought of the bank, the accounts I'd set up for Liam, the mortgage I'd paid off alone. They lived here because of me, slept under my roof, ate my food. And they thought they could discard me. No, they'd learn what it meant to cross me. I stepped back, my hand brushing the keys on the counter again. Their weight was a promise, a tether to the life I'd built. I wouldn't let them take it. Not anymore. Enough, I whispered, my voice steady, cutting through the house's silence. I turned from the window, my gaze settling on the yard again. You'll see. The faint hum of my old computer filled the study, its glow casting shadows across the cluttered desk. A half-empty coffee mug sat beside me, the bitter scent mixing with the musty smell of old books and paper. Outside, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, pattering softly against the window. My house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against your chest. I held my phone, the bank's number glowing on the screen. My thumb hovered over the call button, a knot tightening in my stomach. I thought of Liam, swiping my card for overpriced cocktails, and Olivia, her voice dripping with disdain, will finally have a vacation without this old man. The memory burned, pushing past the hesitation. They'd taken enough dinners, clothes, that damn trip to Hawaii I'd funded. No more. I pressed the button. The line clicked and a calm female voice answered. First Pacific Bank, this is Karen. How can I assist you? I cleared my throat, steadying my voice. This is Robert Cunningham. I need to make some changes to my account. Immediately. Karen's tone was professional, unruffled. Of course, Mr. Cunningham. Can you verify your account details? I rattled off the numbers, my eyes drifting to the keys on the desk. They glinted faintly, a reminder of the house I'd built, the life I'd earned. The one they thought they could leech off forever. Karen typed in the background, her keyboard clicking softly. All right, sir. What changes would you like to make? I want to revoke access for my son, Liam Cunningham, and his wife, Olivia. They're listed as authorized users on my secondary card. I need that stopped. Now. My words came out harder than I'd meant, but I didn't care. The chair creaked as I leaned forward, my free hand curling into a fist. A pause, I see. Can I ask for clarification? Are you removing their access permanently, or is this a temporary hold? Permanent, I said, my voice like steel. They're not to touch my accounts again. Karen's tone softened just a fraction. I understand. I'll need to confirm a few details to process this. Can you provide the last 4 digits of the card in question? I gave her the information, my pulse quickening. Part of me, a small, stubborn part, wanted to hang up to pretend this wasn't happening. Liam was my son, after all. I'd spent years telling myself his coldness was just a phase, that Olivia's barbs were just her nature. But the airport, that phone call, had shattered the lie. I wasn't their bank. I was their father, and they'd spat in my face. All right, Mr. Cunningham, Karen said after a moment. I've removed Liam and Olivia Cunningham as authorized users. The change is effective immediately. They won't be able to use the card anymore. Would you like me to send a confirmation email? Yes, I said, exhaling. Thank you, you're welcome. Is there anything else I can help with? No, that's all. I ended the call, the phone heavy in my hand. For a moment I just sat there, staring at the desk. The coffee had gone cold, a thin film forming on its surface. I'd done it, the first step. A strange mix of relief and dread churned in my gut. What would they do when they found out? Scream? Beg? I almost wanted to hear it. I stood, my knees protesting, and crossed to the window. The yard stretched out, patchy and wet, the neighbor's porch light glowing faintly through the mist. Elaine's house. She'd probably be up, sipping tea, ready to talk my ear off about her garden. But this wasn't her business, not yet. My gaze fell back to the keys on the desk. I picked them up, their cool weight grounding me. This house, this life, it was mine, not theirs. I closed my fist around the keys, the edges biting into my palm. Let them feel what it's like to lose something. The phone buzzed, snapping me out of my thoughts. A text notification lit up the screen, Liam's name. My heart skipped, but I didn't open it, not yet. A slow smile crept across my face, sharp and unfamiliar. Let them squirm. I slipped the phone into my pocket and turned back to the window, the keys still in my hand. The rain had stopped, leaving the world quiet and still. Too quiet. I sat back in my study, the phone still warm from the bank call, and let my mind drift to Hawaii. I could picture it perfectly, Liam and Olivia, smug and carefree, lounging in some overpriced hotel restaurant. The kind with white tablecloths and crystal glasses that caught the light just so. The air would smell of plumeria and salt, the ocean's murmur drifting through open windows. They'd be laughing, toasting their victory over me, oblivious to the storm I'd just unleashed. I imagined the moment it hit. There at their table, Liam in some flashy shirt, Olivia with her perfect nails tapping the stem of a wineglass. The waiter, young, polite, probably used to entitled tourists, slides their card back across the table. "I'm sorry, sir," he says, his voice low. "The payment was declined." Liam's laugh would falter, his brow creasing. "That's impossible. Run it again." He'd lean forward, all confidence, as if his charm could fix a computer's verdict. The waiter would nod, retreating, but the second attempt would fail too. I could see Liam's face redden, his fingers drumming the table. Olivia would lean in, her voice a hiss. "What did you do, Liam? Did you forget to tell him something?" "It's not me," Liam would snap, yanking out his phone. He'd call the bank, his voice rising as the automated system loops him through menus. Olivia's eyes would narrow, her napkin twisted in her hands. Then it would click. "It's him," she'd say, her voice low and venomous. "Your father." Back in my study, I leaned back in the chair, the wood creaking under me. The phone buzzed again, another message from Liam. I ignored it, letting the silence stretch. I knew what was coming. I'd heard their voicemails already, each one angrier than the last. I played them now, the speaker crackling as Liam's voice filled the room. "Dad, what the hell is this?" His tone was sharp, teetering on panic. "The card's not working. We're stuck here. Fix it. Now." The next one was Olivia, her voice like ice. "You think this is funny, Robert, blocking our card? You're ruining our trip. You're pathetic." I let the messages play, their words washing over me. Pathetic, that's what they thought. But they were the ones scrambling, their perfect vacation crumbling because they'd underestimated me. I pictured them back in their hotel room now, the ocean view mocking them. Liam pacing, phone in hand, redialing me uselessly. Olivia perched on the bed, her arms crossed, plodding. "You idiot," she'd say, her voice cutting. "You said he'd never do this. You said he was too soft." "Don't start," Liam would fire back, raking a hand through his hair. "I didn't think he'd go this far. He's never pushed back before." "Well, he has now," Olivia would retort, her eyes flashing. "And we're screwed unless you figure this out." I could almost hear the wheels turning in her head. Olivia was clever, too clever. She'd be the one to pivot, to find a way to strike back. "Call Mason," she'd say, her voice steadying. "He owes us. He can talk to your dad, sort this out." Liam would hesitate, his pride stung, but he'd nod. "Fine, but this isn't over. He's going to regret this." My phone buzzed again, pulling me back to the study. Another voicemail. I played it, Liam's voice low and menacing. "You think you're clever, Dad, cutting us off. You're going to wish you hadn't, I mean it." I set the phone down, my pulse steady. Let them threaten. They had no power here, not anymore. My eyes drifted to the stack of papers on the desk, legal documents, neatly clipped, waiting for my next move. The house keys sat beside them, their dull shine a quiet promise. They could rage all they wanted. I was just getting started. I leaned back, the chair groaning, and stared at the documents. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, leaving the world hushed. Too hushed. The lawyer's office smelled of polished wood and old leather, the kind of scent that clung to important decisions. I sat across from Mr. Hargrove, a gray-haired man with a face like weathered oak, his pen scratching notes on a legal pad. The folder of documents I'd brought lay open on his desk, its contents stark and final. Outside, Portland's downtown buzzed faintly, car horns, footsteps, the pulse of a city moving on without me. Inside, it was just us, the clock ticking softly on the wall. "So," Robert Hargrove said, peering over his glasses, "you're certain about this?" Removing Liam entirely from the will. I nodded, my hands folded in my lap. "Certain." My voice was steady, but my chest tightened. Liam's face flashed in my mind, his grin at 16, holding up a trout we'd caught together. Then his voice from yesterday, cold and accusing. "You're going to regret this." I pushed the memory away. "He's made his choices." Hargrove raised an eyebrow, his pen pausing. "I have to ask, family matters can be emotional. If you change your mind later, it's more paperwork. You're sure you want to move forward?" I hesitated just for a second. I thought of Liam's birthday last month, how I'd called and left a voicemail, my voice cheerful, only to get a text back hours later, "Busy, Dad, talk later." No call came. Olivia's words echoed too, sharp and mocking. They didn't deserve my loyalty, not anymore. "I'm sure," I said, meeting his gaze. "Let's do it." Hargrove nodded, jotting something down. "All right. I'll draft the new will. You'll need to sign it, and we'll need a witness. Should be straightforward." He slid a form across the desk, his pen clicking. "Anything else you want to add? Beneficiaries, specific bequests?" I thought of the house, the keys I'd left on my desk that morning. "The house stays mine," I said. "For now, no beneficiaries. I'll decide later." He scribbled again, then looked up. "Fair enough. I'll have this ready by tomorrow. You can come back to sign. I stood, shaking his hand, the folder tucked under my arm. The weight of it felt right, like a shield. As I stepped toward the door, a familiar voice stopped me. "Robert, that you?" I turned to see Elaine Thompson, my neighbor, standing in the hallway. Her gray curls were tucked under a scarf, her eyes bright despite the lines around them. She held a paper cup of coffee, the steam curling upward. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said, her voice warm but curious. "Elaine," I said, managing a small smile, "just handling some business." Her gaze flicked to the folder, then back to me. "Sounds serious. Got a minute for a coffee? There's a place across the street. My treat." I hesitated, but her warmth was hard to refuse. "Sure," I said, following her out. The lawyer's door clicked shut behind us, the sound sharp in the quiet hall. The cafe was small, its air thick with the scent of roasted beans and cinnamon. We settled at a corner table, the clink of cups and low chatter surrounding us. Elaine sipped her coffee, studying me. "You look like a man with a plan," she said, her tone light but probing. "Spill it. What's got you hauling folders to lawyers?" I chuckled, but it came out hollow. "It's complicated. Try me," she said, leaning forward. "I've got my own stories. Did I ever tell you about my cousin? Tried to swindle me out of my house after my husband passed. Family can be a real kick in the teeth." Her bluntness caught me off guard, but it was comforting. I took a sip of coffee, the bitterness grounding me. "Liam and Olivia," I started, my voice low. "They crossed a line. I'm making sure they don't do it again." Elaine's eyes narrowed, but not with judgment. "Good for you. People like that, they think they can take and take. You've got to draw a line." She paused, then added, "If you need a hand, I'm here. I'm no lawyer, but I'm nosy and I've got time." I smiled, genuinely this time. "I'll keep that in mind." We talked a while longer, her stories pulling me out of my head. But as I walked home later, the folder still under my arm, my thoughts darkened. Elaine was a friend, maybe an ally, but this fight was mine. I turned the corner to my street, the house coming into view, its sagging porch a quiet accusation. Then I froze. A car I didn't recognize, a sleek black sedan, was parked in my driveway. Mason's car, Liam's friend. I slowed my steps, my grip tightening on the folder. The air felt heavy, charged. What was he doing here? The living room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of a table lamp that cast long shadows across the hardwood. The air smelled of polished wood and the faint lavender of the throw blanket draped over the couch. I sat in my old armchair, a photo album open on my lap, the pages yellowed with time. Liam's face stared back at me from a snapshot, his 10th birthday, cake smeared on his cheeks, his grin wide and unguarded. The memory ached, but I pushed it down, my fingers tracing the edge of the album. A low rumble outside snapped me out of it. Headlights swept across the front windows, tires crunching on the gravel drive. I stood, the album sliding shut with a soft thud, and peered through the curtains. Mason's black sedan sat in my driveway, its engine idling like a crouched animal. My pulse quickened, but I forced my breathing steady. So they'd sent him. Liam and Olivia's errant boy. The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I crossed the room, my shoes scuffing the rug, and opened the door. Mason stood on the porch, tall and broad-shouldered, his expensive leather jacket gleaming under the porch light. His smile was all teeth, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Evening, Robert," he said, his voice smooth as oil. "Mind if I come in?" I didn't move, my hand resting on the doorframe. "What do you want, Mason?" His smile tightened, but he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Just a quick chat about Liam and Olivia. You've got them in a bit of a bind, you know." He tilted his head like we were old friends sharing a joke. I kept my expression blank. "They put themselves there, say what you came to say." Mason chuckled, but it was forced. He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me. "All right, straight to it. The card thing. It's causing problems. They're stuck in Hawaii, can't pay for anything. You need to fix it." My jaw clenched, but I kept my voice even. "It's my money, my choice. They don't get to demand anything anymore." His smile vanished, replaced by a hard glint in his eyes. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a growl. "Come on, Robert. You don't want to make this messy. Liam's your son. He deserves your help. Always has." I remembered Mason's help years ago, borrowing $500 for a business deal he never repaid. My fingers tightened on the doorframe. "Deserves," I said, my voice low and sharp. "Like you deserve that loan I gave you. Tell Liam he's on his own now. Both of them are." Mason's face darkened, his hands flexing at his sides. "You're making a mistake, old man. Liam's not going to let this slide. You think you can just cut him off." He's got plans and you're not going to like them. I stepped forward close enough to smell the cologne he'd doused himself in. Tell him to try me, I said, each word deliberate. Now get off my porch. For a moment he didn't move, his eyes locked on mine. Then he snorted, stepping back. This isn't over, he said, jabbing a finger at me. You'll see. He turned, striding back to his car, the door slamming as he peeled out of the drive. I shut the front door, the lock clicking with a satisfying snap. My heart was pounding, but a strange calm settled over me. They thought they could bully me, send their lackey to scare me straight. They were wrong. I crossed to the window, pulling the curtain aside to watch Mason's taillights disappear into the night. The neighborhood was quiet, the only sound the faint chirp of crickets. My gaze drifted to the coffee table where my house keys lay, catching the lamp's light. They gleamed like a promise, small but solid. This was my home, my life, and I'd fight for it. I let the curtain fall, the keys shine lingering in my mind. Outside, the darkness seemed to press closer, heavy with what was coming next. The park was quiet that morning, the air crisp with the scent of damp grass and blooming cherry trees. Their petals drifted across the path, soft and pink, catching in the folds of my coat as I walked. My hands were stuffed in my pockets, the weight of the new Will and Mason's visit still heavy on my mind. The neighborhood felt different now, like it was holding its breath, or maybe that was just me. I slowed near a bench, its wood weathered and splintered. A memory hit me hard, Liam, 10 years old, running ahead of me in this same park, his fishing rod bouncing on his shoulder. "Come on, Dad," he'd shouted, his laugh bright as the sun glinting off the pond. We'd spent hours there, untangling lines, baiting hooks, him chattering about school and dreams. My chest tightened, a dull ache spreading. Had I been too harsh? Cutting him off, rewriting the will, was it too much? He was my son, despite everything. I sat on the bench, the cold seeping through my jeans. The park was nearly empty, just a jogger in the distance and the rustle of leaves overhead. I rubbed my hands together, trying to shake the doubt. Liam wasn't that boy anymore. He was the man who'd left me in an airport, who'd let Olivia mock me while they spent my money. But still, the memory of his laugh lingered, sharp as a blade. "Robert, you look like you're carrying the world." Elaine's voice cut through my thoughts. She stood a few feet away, her gray curls peeking out from a knit cap, her dog, a scruffy terrier named Max, sniffing the grass at her feet. Her eyes were sharp but kind, like she could see right through me. I managed a half smile, just thinking. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Max drags me out every morning," she said, patting the dog's head. His fur was soft, matted with dew. You've got that look, like you're wrestling with something big, want to talk." I hesitated, but the weight in my chest pushed the words out. "It's Liam. I keep remembering him as a kid. Makes me wonder if I'm doing the right thing." Elaine nodded, sitting beside me. Max flopped at her feet, panting. "Kids grow up, Robert. Doesn't mean they stay the people we want them to be." Her voice was gentle but firm. "What's got you second-guessing?" I told her about Mason, the threats, the will. The words came slowly, each one heavy. "I cut him out, Elaine, my own son. What if I'm wrong?" She leaned back, her hands clasped around her coffee thermos. "You're not wrong for wanting respect. I had a nephew, thought he could sweet-talk me out of my house after my Tom died. Smiled to my face, then tried to forge my signature. Family's no excuse for betrayal." She paused, her eyes meeting mine. "You gave Liam everything. What's he given you?" I thought of the airport, Olivia's giggle, Liam's cold voice. "Nothing," I said, the word bitter. "Not for years, exactly." Elaine's tone sharpened. "You're not the villain here, you're a man who's had enough. Don't let guilt trick you into backing down." Her words settled over me like a hand on my shoulder. I nodded, the ache in my chest easing. "Thanks," I said, my voice low. "I needed that." She grinned, standing. "Come on, let's walk. Max'll chew my shoes if we sit too long." We headed to my house, Max trotting ahead. In the kitchen I brewed tea, the kettle's whistle cutting through the quiet. The air smelled of chamomile and the faint lemon of dish soap. Elaine sat at the table, her thermos swapped for a mug. "So," she said, her tone lighter. "What's next?" I poured tea, my eyes catching the folder of documents on the counter. "The new will signed and final." "I keep going," I said, my voice steady now. "They don't get to win." Elaine raised her mug, a glint in her eye. "That's the spirit." "You're tougher than you look, Robert." I smiled, setting the kettle down. The folder seemed to pulse, a quiet reminder of the path I'd chosen. "I need to finish what I started," I said, glancing at her. She nodded, sipping her tea, her silence a kind of approval. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. The documents waited, their weight heavier than ever. The drill's whine filled the hallway, sharp and relentless, as the locksmith worked on the front door. The air carried the acrid tang of fresh paint and metal shavings, mingling with the familiar must of my old house. I stood a few feet away, arms crossed, watching the man swap out the old lock for a shiny new one. Each turn of the screwdriver felt like a stitch closing a wound. Liam and Olivia wouldn't walk through this door again, not without my say. Almost done here, the locksmith said, a wiry guy named Pete with a toolbox that clattered like loose change. You want me to do the back door too? Already done, I said, my voice calm but firm. Just finish this one, I want it solid. Pete nodded, wiping sweat from his brow. Big cleanup, huh? Kicking someone out. I didn't answer, just gave a tight smile. He didn't need to know. The new keys sat in my pocket, their edges pressing into my thigh, a quiet reminder of the line I was drawing. My house. My rules. I turned and headed upstairs, my footsteps heavy on the creaky steps. Liam and Olivia's bedroom door was ajar, the room a snapshot of their carelessness, clothes strewn across the bed, a half-empty coffee mug on the nightstand. I grabbed a stack of cardboard boxes from the hall and started packing. Olivia's designer dresses, each one a jab at my bank account, went in first, their silk slipping through my fingers like water. Liam's gadgets followed, his smartwatch, a gift from me for his last birthday, its screen still smudged from his fingers. Every item was a memory of my generosity, their ingratitude. I worked methodically, folding, stacking, sealing. The act was strangely satisfying, like reclaiming pieces of myself. I paused at a photo on their dresser, Liam and Olivia at some beach, their smiles smug. I tossed it into the box without a second glance. Let them keep their memories. They wouldn't keep my home. Pete's drill stopped, his voice calling up. All set, Mr. Cunningham. Want to test the keys? Be right down, I shouted, taping the last box shut. I carried it downstairs, the weight tugging at my arms, and stacked it with the others in the yard. The grass was damp, the April air cool against my skin. The boxes formed a neat row, a silent eviction notice. I pulled a note card from my pocket, scribbled a message, "You don't live here anymore," and tucked it under the top box's flap. Simple, final. The front door creaked open and Elaine stepped out, her scarf fluttering in the breeze. She'd stopped by to check on me, her presence a steady anchor. "Well, damn, Robert," she said, eyeing the boxes. "You don't mess around." I shrugged, dusting my hands. Had to be done. She nodded, her eyes scanning the yard. "They're going to lose it when they see this. You sure you're ready for the fallout?" "They've had their chances," I said, my voice low. "I'm done waiting for them to change." Elaine's lips twitched, almost a smile. "Good, but keep your eyes open. People like them don't go quietly." I glanced at her, the warning settling in. She was right, Liam and Olivia wouldn't just slink away. But I was ready. Or I thought I was. Pete emerged, toolbox in hand. "Locks are tight, here's your keys." He handed me a small ring, the new keys glinting in the fading light. "Anything else?" "That's it," I said, slipping the keys into my pocket. "Thanks, Pete." He tipped his cap and headed to his van, the engine rumbling as he drove off. Elaine and I stood there, the yard quiet except for the rustle of leaves. The boxes loomed, a testament to the bridge I'd burned. "You did good," Elaine said, her voice soft but sure. "This is yours now, all of it." I nodded, my throat tight. The new keys felt heavier than before, their weight a promise and a burden. I turned to the house, its silhouette sharp against the dusk. Then I heard it, a faint drone overhead, the low hum of a plane cutting through the sky. My grip tightened on the keys, my pulse quickening. They were coming back. The living room was warm, the scent of fresh coffee curling from the mug in my hands. The lamp cast a soft glow, pooling on the rug, its frayed edge as a quiet testament to years of footsteps. Outside, the May evening had settled over Portland's suburbs, the air cool and heavy with the promise of rain. I sat in my armchair, the new keys in my pocket a reassuring weight, when a low rumble broke the silence. Headlights flashed across the curtains, tires crunching on gravel. They were back. I stood, setting the mug down, and moved to the window, easing the curtain aside. Liam and Olivia stumbled out of a taxi, their suitcases thudding onto the driveway. Liam's shirt was rumpled, his hair a mess, while Olivia clutched her designer bag like a lifeline, her heels clicking on the pavement. They looked smaller somehow, diminished under the streetlight's harsh glow. I stayed still, my breath steady, watching. Liam fumbled with his keys, his movements jerky as he approached the front door. The lock didn't budge. He tried again, twisting harder, his shoulders tensing. "What the hell?" he muttered, loud enough to carry through the glass. Olivia stepped closer, her voice sharp. "Try it again, Liam. You're doing it wrong." "I'm not," he snapped, shoving the key in once more. The door stayed shut, unyielding. He slammed his palm against it, the sound echoing in the quiet night. "Dad, open the damn door." I didn't move. My pulse quickened, but not from fear. This was it, the moment I'd built toward. The new locks, the boxes, the note. They'd feel every choice they'd made, every word they'd thrown at me. Olivia's giggle from that airport call echoed in my head. "Without this old man. Let them see what that meant." Liam pounded again, his voice rising. "Dad, I know you're in there. Stop this crap and let us in." Olivia grabbed his arm, her nails digging in. "Scream louder, why don't you? The whole street's watching." "Then what do you suggest?" he hissed, turning on her. "He's locked us out, Liv, our own house." "It's his house," she shot back, her voice low and venomous. "You said he'd never do this. You said he was spineless." Liam's face twisted, but he didn't answer. He kicked the door, the thud dull and futile. Olivia's eyes darted to the side yard, narrowing as she spotted the stack of boxes I'd left there. "What's that?" she said, her tone shifting to something colder. They moved together, their suitcases abandoned on the grass. I leaned closer to the window, my fingers brushing the curtain's rough fabric. Liam reached the boxes first, yanking one open. Olivia's dresses spilled out, silk catching the light. He froze, then dug through another, pulling out his smartwatch, a pair of shoes. He packed our stuff," he said, his voice cracking. Olivia snatched a note card from the top box, her hands trembling as she read it. Her lips parted, then twisted into a snarl. "You don't live here anymore," she read aloud, her voice rising. "Your things are behind the house. Clear the yard by tomorrow." She tore the note in half, the pieces fluttering to the ground. "That bastard." Liam spun back to the door, his fists hammering. "You think this is funny, Dad? Throwing us out like trash. You're heartless." His voice broke, raw and desperate. Olivia joined him, her knocks sharp and rhythmic. "Robert, open this door right now. You can't do this to us." I stepped back, letting the curtain fall. Their voices faded to a muffled roar like a storm raging outside a sealed window. My chest was tight, but not with regret. This was justice, cold and clear. They'd taken my trust, my money, my home for granted. Now they had nothing but their anger in their bags. The phone on the coffee table buzzed, Liam's name flashing. I stared at it, the screen glowing in the dim room. Another buzz, then another, voicemails piling up. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear their excuses. The keys in my pocket felt heavier, grounding me. I turned away from the window, the pounding outside growing fainter, and set the phone down on the table, its light flickering like a dying star. The kitchen was dark, save for the faint glow of a single bulb above the sink. The air smelled of chamomile tea, the kettle still warm on the counter. Outside, the drizzle had started again, streaking the windows and blurring the streetlights. I stood by the living room window, the curtain pulled back just enough to see Liam and Olivia in the yard. Their suitcases sagged under the rain, the cardboard boxes I'd left them collapsing into soggy heaps. Liam's shoulders slumped, his hands stuffed in his pockets, while Olivia paced, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice a sharp murmur I couldn't make out. My phone buzzed again, vibrating against the wooden table. Another voicemail. I picked it up, the screen cold against my palm, and played the message. Liam's voice crackled through, strained and raw. "Dad, come on, this is crazy. You can't just lock us out. Where are we supposed to go? Open the door, please." A pause, then quieter. "I'm sorry, okay? Let's talk." The next message was Olivia, her tone tight, like she was forcing the words out. "Robert, we messed up, I get it. Can you just let us in? We can work this out, please." Her voice wavered, a crack in her usual polish, but it didn't move me. I'd heard their apologies before, empty promises to get what they wanted. I set the phone down, my reflection faint in the window. They were still out there, Liam dragging a suitcase toward the curb, Olivia gesturing wildly as she spoke into her phone. I imagined them piling into a taxi, the driver casting curious glances as they directed him to some cheap motel on the edge of Portland. The kind of place with flickering neon signs and carpets that smelled of mildew. I could picture them in a cramped room, the walls thin, the bed creaking under their weight. Liam would slump on the mattress, his face buried in his hands, while Olivia paced, her heels clicking on the linoleum. You told me he wouldn't do this, Olivia would hiss, her voice low to avoid the neighbors. You said he was too weak to stand up to us. Liam would snap back, his patience frayed. I didn't think he'd go this far, Liv. He's never fought back before. How was I supposed to know? You should have known, she'd retort, throwing her bag onto the bed. That stunt at the airport was your idea. Leave him behind, you said. He'll get over it, now look at us. Don't pin this on me, Liam would growl, standing to face her. You're the one who kept pushing, whining about his house, his money. You wanted this life as much as I did. Olivia's eyes would flash, but her voice would drop, cold and cutting. We're not done. We'll go back tomorrow. Beg if we have to, he's got to crack eventually. I blinked, pulling myself back to the kitchen. The image was so vivid I could almost smell the motel's stale air. My phone buzzed again, but I didn't check it. Their voices, their panic, it was proof of their weakness. They'd built their lives on my generosity, and now, stripped of it, they were floundering. I felt no pity, only a quiet calm like the stillness after a storm. I poured myself a cup of tea, the steam curling upward, and sat at the table. The wood creaked under my elbows, familiar and solid. My eyes fell on a small note card tucked under a stack of bills, Elaine's handwriting neat and looping. Coffee tomorrow, my treat. I smiled, the tension in my chest easing. She'd been there through all of this, a steady voice cutting through the noise. Tomorrow I'd tell her everything, share the weight of this victory. The rain tapped against the window, a soft rhythm. I sipped my tea, the warmth spreading through me, and let the note card rest in my hand. Outside, the yard was empty now, their suitcases gone, the boxes a ruined pile. They'd lost, and I was still here. The cafe was a warm haven, its air thick with the scent of roasted coffee and fresh pastries. Sunlight streamed through the wide windows, glinting off the wooden tables and the counter where baristas chatted over the hiss of the espresso machine. I sat across from Elaine, my hands wrapped around a ceramic mug, the heat seeping into my palms. Her gray curls bounced as she leaned forward, her eyes bright with curiosity. So she said, stirring her latte, how's it feel to be the king of your castle again? I chuckled, the sound lighter than I'd expected. Feels right, I said, my voice steady, quiet but right. She grinned, tapping her spoon against the mug with a soft clink. Damn straight. You showed him, Robert. Not many would have had the guts. I took a sip, the coffee bitter and strong, grounding me. The cafe buzzed around us, couples murmuring, a student typing furiously on a laptop, the barista calling out an order. It felt normal, like the world had kept turning despite the war I'd fought. They called again last night, I said, setting the mug down. Liam and Olivia left messages begging to come back, said they were sorry that they'd change. Elaine's brow arched, her lips pursing. And you believe them? I shook my head, a small smile tugging at my mouth. Not a word. It's the same old song, say what I want to hear, then go back to their ways. I'm done dancing to it. Good, she said, her voice firm. You protected yourself, that's what matters. They made their bed, let them lie in it. I nodded, her words settling like stones in a riverbed. I thought of Liam's last message, his voice soft, almost broken. Dad, please, give us a chance. I'd listened to it once, then deleted it, the act as final as locking the door. Olivia's message had been smoother, calculated, but it rang just as hollow. They weren't sorry for hurting me, they were sorry they'd lost their meal ticket. The clarity of it was freeing, like shedding a weight I'd carried too long. We talked a while longer, Elaine sharing her plans to plant roses in her garden, her enthusiasm pulling me into the moment. You should come help, she said, her eyes twinkling. Get your hands dirty, it's good for the soul. Maybe I will, I said, meaning it. For the first time in years, I felt like I had room to breathe, to choose my own path. Back home, the kitchen was warm, the air filled with the sweet scent of apples and cinnamon. I decided to bake a pie, something I hadn't done in ages. The dough was rolled out on the counter, the apples sliced and spiced, their juice sticking to my fingers. I worked slowly, deliberately, the rhythm soothing. I remembered baking for Liam when he was a boy, his eyes wide as he sneaked a taste of the filling. The memory didn't sting anymore, it was just a fact, a piece of a life I'd left behind. The front door creaked open, and Elaine stepped in, a small bouquet of daisies in her hand. For my garden, she said, setting them in a vase on the table. Thought they'd brighten the place. They do, I said, sliding the pie into the oven. The kitchen glowed, sunlight spilling through the open door, catching the petals in a soft halo. Elaine settled at the table, her presence easy, familiar. We should do a dinner soon, she said. You, me, maybe a few neighbors. Break in this new chapter right. I smiled, wiping my hands on a towel. I'd like that. She leaned back, her fingers tracing the vase's edge. You're going to be okay, Robert. Better than okay. I nodded, the words sinking in. The oven hummed, the pie baking, its warmth filling the room. I thought of Liam and Olivia somewhere out there, scrambling to rebuild without me. I didn't wish them harm, just distance. This house, this life was mine again, and for the first time in years I felt like I was home. The sunlight shifted, bathing the kitchen in gold. I stood by the counter, the daisies bright against the wood, and let the moment hold me. Whatever came next, I was ready. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching. Story 4. Parents made me pay rent and then kicked me out so that my golden child brother could move in. So I cut contact, but now they want my inheritance money which my grandparents left for me. Hi, I'm an 18-year-old female seeking advice on an incident that happened between me and my family, which consists of my mom, dad, and my older brother, who we'll call Brad. I'll begin with some background for a little context. So I was the second child in a family of extremely high-achieving people. Both my parents are college professors. Brad is 6 years older than me and has always been my family's miracle child because it was hard for my mom to get pregnant initially. He has always been this golden child, extremely good at whatever he puts his hands to. When I was born, the bar of expectations for me was set high because of Brad. I am extremely kind and generous, and I involve myself in a lot of social activities. I'm not a top scorer or an exceptional athlete, but one thing I know about myself is that I am a good artist. Art has always intrigued me, and that's what I've pursued since a very young age. It was hard for my family to understand that having different interests didn't make me less capable. So according to them, I have been the failure child. The bias since my childhood has been so blatant that even my extended family could sense that I was treated differently. One Christmas when I was 5, while opening the gifts, I obviously went ahead and picked up the bigger box. Even with the repeated insistence of my mother, I didn't leave it, so my dad decided to snatch the box from me in front of everyone. I began to cry and they tried to shush me with smaller gift, then handed the bigger box to Brad. He got a telescope, whereas I was given a dress, which I had like 100 of at that point. The next day my grandparents sent me a dollhouse, realizing what had gone down, and from that day on they've been the only people to support me. My brother had just passed high school when I turned 13. He got into a good college, and my parents also decided to move us all to a better house in a suburban and extremely posh location. I wasn't very excited about the move because that meant my grandparents would be even farther away. Anyway, I had no say in it, so I went along. My parents had saved a good amount of their income for Brad's education, and the new house was taken on a loan. Brad and I didn't have a sour relationship, or a relationship at all, but I still decided to gift him a watch with my saved pocket money as a congratulatory gift. He saw the watch and smiled, only for my dad to intervene and take it away because he had gifted Brad a branded one. Brad didn't say anything, but it broke my heart, so from that day on, I decided to mind my own business. Every night at dinner was a horror. All my parents could talk about was how great Brad was doing at college. The constant comparison got on my nerves, and I cried about it to my grandparents almost every night. I had previously tried to stay with them instead of my parents, but my parents denied it, suspecting I would be spoiled if they let me stay with my grandparents. Now, it is legal in my state for people to work from the age of 14. So on my birthday that year, instead of making the day special for me, my parents decided to give me a valuable life lesson and suggested that I start working part-time to earn my own expenses since they were tight on money because of the new house. They had ample money to send to Brad for his expenses, but were suddenly short as soon as I reached the legal age to earn. I felt lonely but didn't say anything because I knew there was no point. We moved to the new house in a few months. I had started working at a bookstore and was able to earn better than what most people got for the job due to the extra hours I put in. I had told my grandparents about it, and they were happy knowing I was financially free now, but also wished I could move out soon for a better future. Brad, on the other hand, had been causing some trouble. He had gotten into a relationship and was missing classes and stuff, which led to my parents being frustrated at home. Within that week, my parents decided to have a talk with me. They told me that finances had been tough since they bought this house and had to pay for Brad as well, and they knew I was earning well enough for a part-time job. So they suggested I start contributing to the house with my money in the form of rent. Their explanation was that they were teaching me the ways of the world without necessarily putting the burden on me. I didn't say anything and went to my room. They got a call from my grandparents, who scolded them for treating me this way after I told them about it. They had a long fight, and after 2–3 hours, both my parents came to my room and asked me to either pay the rent from the next month or find another place to live. My first response was that I was going to stay with my grandparents, but it was too far from my school, and because they were quite old, I decided not to be a burden on them, irrespective of them insisting that I come to their house, and I started giving my parents rent. I would have helped them with the finances if they had asked nicely, but their holier-than-thou attitude was what led to our relationship turning sour. I was just waiting for school to be over so I could move out of their house because after this, I didn't feel any connection to my own family. The next 2 years were quiet for me. I used to mind my own business and stopped having dinner with my parents. I was doing okay at school, and with my final year of high school approaching, I could see myself getting into a reputed art school. My parents weren't concerned as long as they were getting their monthly rent, and they were actually preoccupied with Brad. Brad had just graduated from college and was unwilling to come home to be with his girlfriend. His life had completely derailed after getting into a relationship, with his grades going down by the end of his degree, due to which he couldn't get a good enough job. My parents were pressuring him to come back home, but he went off the grid for 2 days, and they freaked out at him bailing on them. When they got a call back, they were informed by him that he had married his girlfriend in Vegas. The next few weeks were tough because there were constant arguments at our home regarding this. Brad was trying to convince them to meet his wife once before passing judgment on her, and my parents were just ranting about how he was bringing shame to our name. I couldn't have been less bothered, just that I started to hang out at my friends' houses more. No one other than my grandparents knew about this. So my parents eventually met Brad and his wife, but weren't welcoming. They bitched about the girl after she and Brad left, and I honestly found them pathetic for this. But I wasn't going to involve myself because my last high school year had begun, and there was no way I was going to risk it for their petty fights. I had started to live at my grandparents' house for weeks at a time because of my toxic household, and because I had turned 18. Things changed right before my finals. Things started to go bad between Brad and his wife because of our parents' interference, and they eventually concluded that divorce was the only option. My parents couldn't have been happier and blamed everything that was wrong with Brad on his now ex-wife. I was asked to pay for my parents' trip to Brad's city to bring him back home, which I clearly said no to. They weren't pleased but arranged funds from somewhere else to get Brad back. A detail I didn't mention was that this new house we had moved to only had 2 bedrooms. So when Brad was brought back, my parents asked me to shift to the hall for the time being since I was about to leave for college in a few months. They clearly didn't care about me or my education, and how this shift could affect me, but wished for their golden child to have access to everything to start fresh. Because I was paying rent to them, I told them that this arrangement wasn't acceptable to me so close to my finals. They suggested that if this wasn't good enough for me, then I could go stay at my grandparents' house like I had been doing for the past few months, just that I would still have to pay the rent, because most of my stuff would still be at the house. I expected Brad to say something, but he didn't bat an eye at our parents treating me like this. I couldn't believe how cruel my own family was being to me, but I decided to stay strong. I went straight to my room, packed all the stuff I needed, and called a cab to leave their house. While leaving, I asked them to do whatever they wanted with the stuff I left, because I wasn't going to pay a single penny to help their poor selves and fund their child who couldn't do anything in his life. I had already called an Uber, so I stormed out. I called my grandparents on the way and explained everything to them and how I was coming to their house. They welcomed me with open arms and provided me with a safe space. They had gotten calls from my dad asking if I was there so that they could come there to ridicule me after I humiliated them. But my grandparents lied about me not being there and asked my parents not to bother them. The next morning, I saw I had gotten a few calls from them, but over the week, the number of calls started to decrease, meaning they didn't really care if I was doing okay, so in reciprocation, I went no contact with them. I studied hard for my finals and passed with good grades. I had also applied to colleges and was awaiting the results. One day when I came back home to my grandparents' house, I was surprised to find my parents sitting there, waiting for me. As soon as they saw me, my mom started to cry, and my dad, in an angry yet sad voice, began to berate me and called me the worst daughter ever because I abandoned them in their time of need and didn't help them financially when I could have. They were actually at my grandparents' house to ask them for some money because after I stopped paying rent, they were facing difficulties in paying their mortgage. They're now trying to make me feel like in a hole by saying that family is everything and I abandoned them. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who commented on the original post and understood my situation in that household. Agreeing with y'all, I do believe that my family has been cruel to me and my decision to leave them was right. I'll continue from where I left off. So my parents had come to my grandparents' house, pleading for money to pay their mortgage. My grandparents were willing to listen to them, but decided against it after they saw my parents blaming me for everything. Once my father called me the worst daughter ever, my grandpa lost it and gave it back to him in his own words. He told my father that he had been a terrible parent to me since my childhood because he expected too much of me. Grandpa kept going and let him know how everyone in our extended family pitied me because of how I was treated as a child. My parents tried to argue back, but were shut down quickly when they were reminded of how they kicked me out to have their good-for-nothing son Brad back. Somehow he wasn't a liability to them, but I was. My grandfather then broke the news to those two. He told them that he has over the years seen me grow into this wonderful person, and so has decided to give me my parents' share of the property in his will. My parents' jaws were touching the floor at this point. Realizing that they didn't have any other option, they began to shed crocodile tears and tried to convince my grandma to give them back their share. She reminded them that karma hit them in the face for what they did to me and that she had no regrets. My parents then began to beg me to convince my grandparents. They didn't once apologize for their nasty comments, but expected me to treat them nicely because they were family. Because I have been a fairly docile person all my life, they expected me to be kind to them. But on seeing how hard my grandparents were trying to fight for me, I grew a spine and let them know that there was no way they deserved a kid like me, and that maybe they could expect funds from their golden child, whose life they chose to destroy. They got extremely quiet all of a sudden and then began screaming at me, calling me names and wishing I was never born. My grandparents were done with them and asked them to leave before the cops were called. My parents left, all flustered. I began to cry and profusely thank my grandparents for being my actual parents, and that I didn't wish for their money after all they had done for me. They consoled me and let me know that they had made up their mind long ago when they saw how selfish my parents were. They had also saved some money for Brad because he was their grandchild after all, but there was no way any of it could be accessed by my parents. They asked me not to care much about it all and to focus on my future, which I did. As I mentioned before, I had applied to a few colleges and fortunately got accepted into the best one. I decided to apply for a student loan, but after deliberating with my grandparents, I realized they were extremely wealthy and insisted on paying my tuition, to which, after a little hesitation, I agreed. I was going to leave in a month when the session began. About my parents and Brad, I hadn't heard about them so far and was happy things were working out this way because it was the first time I was feeling fully confident in myself. I was glad I had chosen to cut contact with them because no matter who it is, toxic people do make your lives miserable. Update 2, I thought the drama was over, but I was way off on that assumption. Since the last update, which was a week ago, I hadn't really heard from my family until one day I received an email from Brad. He mentioned in the email that he didn't have my number and wished to meet me once to talk. At first, I was a bit hesitant because honestly, we never really had a relationship, but then I brushed aside my worries and reminded myself that I had my grandparents with me. I replied affirmatively to the email, and we decided to meet for lunch at a local cafe. I had reached the location before Brad and was contemplating my decision to meet him. I chickened out and was about to leave when he showed up. He was looking pretty tired and had grown a stubble. It clearly looked like he wasn't doing okay. The first few minutes were a bit awkward, but I decided to initiate the conversation. Then he began talking, and boy, did I get some tea. So he told me that the house was a mess since my parents found out we weren't getting anything from our grandparents. For the first few days, the blame was on me, and then it shifted to them fighting each other. Brad, who had already been going through a tough divorce, couldn't handle it all and had left the house and had been staying at a friend's. The day before, he visited home and saw the state of the house. It looked like a bachelor's pad that hadn't been cleaned in months. Both the parents weren't at their jobs but sitting inside the home, engaging in day drinking. Brad went ahead and cleaned the house, to which our parents replied that there wasn't a need for it because the house would be taken away in a few days as they couldn't afford it anymore. I felt extremely awkward hearing all this and didn't know how to respond because I had been in situations worse than this because of my parents and sometimes Brad, and there was no one other than my grandparents to console me. But I didn't wish to sound unsympathetic, so I nodded. Brad thought that I was sympathizing with him and kept talking, leading to him discussing his personal life. He told me that he had gone to meet his ex-wife secretly a few months back, and they ended up in the same hotel room. He said he had gotten a call from her yesterday, informing him that she was pregnant and wanted to keep the child while rekindling their relationship. Now he revealed the actual reason why he wished to meet me. He told me that since I had gotten money from our grandparents recently, maybe I could give a tiny share of it to our parents and some of it to him, so that my parents would finally be able to get their lives together, and he could begin fresh with his upcoming parenthood. He reasoned that this was going to be a favor he'd return as soon as he could, and maybe I could do this for my brother in the spirit of our relationship. Sitting there, I couldn't believe his audacity. I thought all this while that he needed an ear, but he was actually there for money. I lost it at that point and decided to be petty. I reminded him that no one was there for me my whole life, and I remember him standing quietly when our parents were kicking me out, so he better not disgrace the word family with his filthy mouth and ask shamelessly for money from me. I also told him that it was our parents who were the reason for their divorce because they deliberately interfered by filling his ears the parents he was asking money for. Before he could say anything, I left money for my portion of the order and walked out. I went back to my grandparents' house and told them everything. They said they thought Brad was different, but as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Although my grandparents are still concerned about his ex-wife and his child, I think the fault was mine this time because I chose to respond to Brad and meet him, but there was no way I was going to entertain them any further. Update 3. This update is a week from the last one. I'll be moving to my college within the next 2 weeks. So the last time, I talked about how I reminded Brad of his place when he tried to ask for money from me. Everything I'm stating now is what I heard from my grandparents, who heard it from my aunt, who heard it directly from the source, Brad. After I told Brad about our parents' involvement in him getting the divorce, he went home angry and confronted our parents. They tried to calm him down and convince him that whatever they did was for his good, but he digressed and decided to leave them for good. They tried calling my grandparents to intervene and stop Brad from leaving, but they told our parents about the ex-wife's pregnancy and how there was no way Brad could be stopped now. My parents also had to vacate their house because they were unable to afford the high mortgage, and they had now moved to a very low-profile area. As far as I know, Brad had left to stay at his ex-wife's house, at least until he gets himself together, and after that they might think about getting back together. Now what I'm going to narrate has happened pretty recently, and I'm still quite upset about it. So after Brad left, my parents somehow realized, or assumed, that it was me who told Brad everything and was the reason they were in such a fix in the first place. They decided to warn everyone against me and wrote a pretty delusional post calling me not only an illegitimate child, but also a burden. They thought their posting such filth would garner them some sympathy, but people who had seen my childhood read that post and wrote some nasty comments about my parents, saying how undeserving they were of a child like me. A few who didn't know anything rang me up and chose some choice words to remind me how ungrateful I was as a child, and I replied to them, saying if they don't know me, their opinion doesn't mean 2 cents to me. It offended most of them, but honestly, I didn't care enough. The only thing I was quite sad about was my parents thinking so lowly of me. I had always tried to be what they wanted me to become, only for them to blame everything wrong in their lives on me. I cried to my grandparents about it, who said they would make sure I wouldn't have to tolerate my parents once I left the city to study. Now, since my parents' plan to defame me to their advantage had failed, they tried to use the legal route to get back the inheritance they had lost. The lawyer was a family lawyer and had a great relationship with my grandparents. He gave my parents a reality check and asked them to stop humoring themselves, leaving them embarrassed. Then he told my grandpa about it, who narrated the incident to us as a funny story. I don't think my parents' shenanigans are going to stop, but I hope things don't get any worse for me, at least until I leave. After I leave, I will officially be done with them, and none of it would be my business, which, to be honest, is a pretty exciting prospect at this point. Update 4. So, I am writing this update after a month. I am now living in the dorm of my college and having excellent time adjusting to this new life away from the toxicity. I have still been in constant touch with my grandparents, which is why I am able to write this update. Before I begin, I'd like to answer a question that was being asked a lot. A lot of the comments mentioned that my parents are professors and wondered how it was possible for them to run out of money to pay the mortgage. I think people have underestimated how bad their financial planning was. The new house we moved to was extremely costly, way beyond what our parents earned. They thought they'd be able to pay through their savings but were way off in their calculations, and that's why they were facing such a financial crisis now. Now, about the situation with my parents. They have been bad-mouthing me to anyone and everyone, but most people have not been taking them seriously after their post. Brad, on the other hand, lived with his ex-wife for like 2 weeks and came back to our hometown in hopes of better opportunities. He had taken some money from his ex-wife and was searching for places to live because he didn't wish to go back home to my parents. My grandparents offered him their place to stay until he found a job, and he accepted. When they asked him about his future plans, he told them that he still plans to get back with his ex-wife for the sake of their family. Our parents tried to get in touch with him, but he outright asked them to get their act together before they tried to be a part of his life. My grandparents mentioned to me that they wished to help Brad out because they could feel his desire to change and were going to offer him some money once he got a job. I didn't give any opinions but trusted my grandparents for their best judgment. A few days later, I came back to my grandparents' house to collect some stuff I didn't take in the first go. I also gifted them a painting I made, which they forcefully paid me for as a token for my first sale as an artist. I thanked them and got a bit emotional, remembering how my parents used to ask for money for me when I was just a child. My grandfather, on hearing this, mentioned how he found my parents taking rent from me absurd in the first place, because they didn't have any expenses other than groceries. I asked him what he was talking about, and he told me that he had set up a fund for my and Brad's education since middle school, and that was what paid for most of our school and Brad's college expenses, with my parents having full control over it. This came as a huge surprise to me because I was told since my childhood that I should start paying up ASAP to reduce the burden on my parents and handle my own expenses. I told my grandfather that I had no idea of this, and he took it into his hands to confront my parents. Brad was still living there and had come back after his day of job searching around the town. My grandma invited my parents, and what unfolded was something we didn't expect. When my parents showed up, Grandpa sat them down and asked them about the fund for my and Brad's education and our presents. They tried to cover by saying how it was used as intended, but on being asked further about why I had to contribute, they broke down. They admitted to using all that money for their own enjoyment and activities, never once thinking about how that would affect us. I couldn't believe how my own parents could be this selfish. After listening to everything they had to say, I made it very clear that I wanted nothing to do with them. Even if I ever, which is not a huge possibility at this moment, decide to have a relationship with them in the future, it will be on my terms. The next day, as I was packing to go back to college, Brad came to my room and apologized to me for everything, and for not being there as a big brother. He said I was still family to him, and he would love it if his child could get to have time with their aunt. I decided to forgive him and slowly build our non-existent relationship. My grandparents were happy that we were trying to patch things up, and honestly, if my grandparents weren't there for me, I don't know where I would have been by now. So I have decided to dedicate my first professional painting collection to them. Story 5. I was coming home from deployment, my first Christmas with family in years. Dad texted, "Christmas is better without you. Don't come." I replied with a single word, "Understood." Then I made a quiet change to some of the paperwork. 48 hours later, there were 7 missed calls, one of them from their lawyer. "My name is Caleb. I'm 28 years old, a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army, and until recently, the guy who sent half his paycheck home every month because I thought that's what family meant. I've been stationed in Germany for the past year. Haven't seen my family in person in almost 4. Not because I didn't want to, but because there's only so many times you can fly halfway across the world just to feel like an afterthought in your own living room. Still, this year I had hope. Which is funny, really. You'd think someone trained in tactical risk assessment would know better than to keep betting on people who never show up for you. But I guess I'm human before I'm a soldier. And humans hope, even when we shouldn't. When I found out I was approved for Christmas leave, I was genuinely excited. I hadn't been home for the holidays since I enlisted. I pictured my mom getting emotional, maybe even setting a place for me at the table. I imagined my dad offering me a beer without making it weird. I even thought, idiotically, that my sister might ask about my life instead of her own car problems, so I booked the flight. Non-refundable because apparently I also believe in miracles. I messaged my mom, "Got leave. I'll be home for Christmas. Can't wait to see everyone." She heart-reacted the message. No words, just a little red heart. I tried not to read too much into it. I really did. For a few days, I let myself believe it would all be okay, that I'd come home to warmth instead of tension. That the people I'd been helping financially month after month might actually want me there for more than just the money. Then, 12 days before Christmas, my phone buzzed while I was standing in the base kitchen halfway through a stale protein bar. It was from my dad. "Christmas is better without you. Don't come." I stared at it for a long time, hoping it was a joke, a typo, anything. 2 minutes later, my sister followed up. "It'll just make things awkward. Please don't show up." That one hit harder than it should have. Not because she'd ever been warm, but because it sounded like the kind of text you send about an ex, not your own brother. I didn't argue. I didn't ask why. I just replied, "Understood." I'd like to say I didn't feel anything, that I was used to it, but that would be a lie. The kind of lie soldiers tell themselves to sleep better at night. No, my heart broke. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just in that quiet, familiar way where you feel something inside you shift and know it won't shift back. And then something else happened. Not anger exactly, not revenge, just clarity. That night, I logged into the systems where my name still lived. The joint utility account I'd been covering temporarily for 3 years. My sister's car insurance, which had quietly billed to my card since she lost her job. And most importantly, the mortgage payment portal where I'd been sending money every month, even though I was never on the deed. I didn't own the house, but I'd helped keep it afloat. My dad couldn't qualify a loan after his layoff. My credit and income made the approval possible. And since then, I'd been the invisible crutch no one acknowledged. So I made a few quiet changes. First, I shut down the auto transfers. Then I sent a formal email to the mortgage servicer stating that I would no longer be contributing financially and that all communication should go through the listed primary borrower, my father. "Are you sure?" the rep asked on the phone. It may trigger a refinancing requirement or payment disruption. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me, I'm sure. Then I did something I can't fully explain. I still took the flight home. Yeah, I know, they told me not to come. They made it clear I wasn't welcome, but the ticket was booked, and maybe some sad, stubborn part of me needed to see it through. To come home one last time, even if I didn't step foot in the house. I landed 2 days before Christmas. Didn't rent a car, just took a cab straight to a budget motel off the interstate. The kind with two thin walls and mystery stains on the curtains. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the town I used to know. The lights, the same stores, the same cold wind through bare trees, but I didn't feel like I belonged here. I felt like a stranger who had outstayed his welcome in his own life. I didn't go by the house, didn't reach out again. I just waited. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing nonstop. 7 missed calls, 3 from my dad, 2 from a blocked number, 1 from my sister, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize until the voicemail played. Mr. Morgan, this is Nathan Calloway, legal counsel for your parents. I've been informed that you've withdrawn financial support tied to their mortgage. They're understandably concerned. I'd like to speak with you before this creates further complications. Complications, I whispered, staring at the phone. Now they were concerned. Not when I was wiring money across the Atlantic. Not when I was missing birthdays, holidays, entire years of my own life. No, now that the money stopped. I didn't call back. I ordered cheap takeout, pulled the thin motel curtains shut, and let the silence wrap around me like armor. I was officially home for Christmas, just not where they could see me. And for the first time in years, I felt the edge of something I hadn't tasted in a long time. Control. I don't remember the first time I felt like the outsider in my own family. I just remember realizing it had always been that way. There wasn't one big event. No dramatic get-out-of-my-house moment. Just a slow accumulation of moments where I was reminded, politely, passively, or with a smirk, that I was useful but not essential. Present but not central. I was 8 when my sister Haley was born. She came into the world red-faced and squalling, and my parents treated her like she had descended directly from heaven on a personal cloud. My dad said she was the miracle baby, which always made me wonder what that made me. A warm-up act. To be fair, I was a quiet kid, not brooding or weird, just low maintenance. I read books, lined up my toy soldiers, got decent grades. No one worried about me, and in my family, not needing help meant not getting attention. My dad was a foreman at a steel plant back then, big personality, loud laugh, strong opinions. He was the kind of man who believed emotion was a weakness unless it came out of a clenched fist or a raised voice. If I cried, he told me to knock it off. If I got quiet, he called me dramatic. If I got mad, I was told to stop acting like a girl. My mom was gentler, but in that vague, foggy way where you're not entirely sure she's in the room with you. She'd forget parent-teacher conferences, lose track of when my sports practices were, sometimes forget to pack lunch. But she remembered Haley's ballet recitals, her playdates, her favorite snacks. I wasn't unloved, just unnoticed. Unless I did something wrong. When I turned 16, I got a part-time job at a local gas station. I saved every dollar. I had this fantasy that I'd use it to buy a used car, get out, maybe drive until the world felt wider. But 1 month in, my dad borrowed my savings to fix a leak in the roof. The roof never got fixed. But Haley's Sweet 16 had a DJ and catered cupcakes. I joined the army at 19. No one stopped me. My dad said figures. My mom cried, but it felt performative, like she thought that was what moms were supposed to do. Haley didn't say anything at all. I think she assumed I'd come back eventually, that I'd orbit around them like always. Boot camp was brutal, but it made sense to me. There were rules, expectations, consequences. If you worked hard, you earned something. You were part of something. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a place. Meanwhile, back home, nothing changed. Or rather, everything changed and I wasn't told. I learned my dad had been laid off from the plant when I saw a GoFundMe link my mom posted on Facebook. The caption said, "Hard times, trying to stay afloat. Every little bit helps." That was the first time I wired them money. I didn't even think about it, just logged into my military account and sent $2,000. My dad didn't say thank you, just texted, "That should cover this month. Let me know when you can send more." After that, it became routine. Power bill, car insurance, the mortgage. There was always a reason, Always a sigh from my mom and a guilt trip from my dad. It's not forever. You're the only one doing okay. Haley, meanwhile, was working part-time and figuring things out. At 22, she crashed her second car. I paid the deductible and helped her get a used SUV. She sent me a one-word text: "Thanks." A month later, she posted a picture with the caption, "When you work hard, you earn your rewards." I didn't say anything. I just screenshotted it and saved it in a folder called Unpaid Debts and Unsaid Things. When I visited for Christmas 4 years ago, my last real attempt, they barely looked up when I walked in. My old room had been converted into storage. I slept on the couch. During dinner, my dad raised a glass to Haley. "To the one who always shows up." I didn't speak, didn't eat much either. The next morning there was no gift with my name on it, just a mug that said "Grumpy Vet." Everyone laughed. My mom said, "It's a joke." I smiled because that's what you do when you're a walking punchline. After that, I stopped going back. I still sent money, still answered calls, but something in me started closing doors, quietly, one by one. And yet somehow I still hoped. When I got approved for leave this year, I told myself maybe they'd changed. Maybe I'd show up and they'd be happy to see me. Not because I'd wired money or fixed another crisis, but because I was me. It was a stupid hope, but hope doesn't always need permission. Sometimes it just shows up. Now, sitting in a motel off the highway, I thought about all of it. The birthdays I'd missed, the paychecks I'd rerouted, the versions of myself I'd buried just to keep the peace. I thought about how I trained for combat zones but couldn't survive my own living room. I thought about how Haley once told me I was too intense because I didn't laugh at a meme where someone pretended to be a homeless veteran for likes. I thought about how my mom used to say, "We love you, we're just not good at showing it," as if love was a riddle and I'd failed to solve it. I thought about all of it, and I realized something that both hurt and healed at the same time. I wasn't part of that family, not really. I'd just been financing it. The calls started 2 days before Christmas. At first, I ignored them. Not out of spite, at least not consciously, but because I didn't know them urgency. I was done dropping everything the moment my phone lit up with a 503 area code. Done running damage control for people who only remembered my number when something broke. The first wave was small. A missed call from Dad, a voicemail from an unknown number, one from Haley sent at 11:49 p.m., which I imagine was just late enough to be annoying but early enough to be dramatic. I didn't listen. Then came the second wave. 7 missed calls before noon, 1 from the house landline, 3 from Dad's cell, 2 from Haley, and 1 from a number labeled Callaway and Green Law Office. That one got my attention. I sat on the edge of my motel bed, coffee cup in hand, staring at the caller ID like it might explain itself. Eventually, curiosity won. I pressed play. "Mr. Morgan, this is Nathan Callaway, counsel for your parents. I've been informed that you've ceased financial contributions connected to a jointly financed home. They're understandably distressed. I'd like to speak with you before this creates further complications." Complications, I muttered. Right, like self-respect. I didn't call back. I wasn't interested in being managed. I knew how this game worked. Turn concern into guilt, make guilt sound like duty, and hope I folded before they had to face the consequences of living without me. Instead, I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and went for a walk. It was snowing, that soft early winter kind of snow, just enough to dust your shoulders, not enough to make anything beautiful. The streets looked the same as I remembered, a little dull, a little gray. My hometown hadn't changed much, but somehow I had. I passed the bakery where I used to buy cheap donuts on Saturday mornings. The sign was faded now. Haley once got caught shoplifting there, and I was the one who biked across town to bring her home so Dad wouldn't find out. She thanked me by not speaking to me for a week, said I ruined her vibe. I chuckled to myself, a sad kind of laugh, the kind that sounds more like an exhale with memories stapled to it. When I got back to the motel, the receptionist gave me a look. "The phone at the front desk's been ringing off the hook for you," she said. "You some kind of local celebrity." "Something like that," I said, and went upstairs. That night, I did what any emotionally stable adult would do. I opened the bottle of cheap whiskey I'd bought at the gas station and sat in the dark, watching old training videos on my laptop. Not because I missed deployment, just because it reminded me of who I was when I wasn't being used. Somewhere around 1 a.m., the messages turned. Up until then, it had been outrage and confusion. "What the hell, Caleb? You can't just abandon your family. We needed that money. What's wrong with you?" But now the tone shifted. "Mom's been crying all day. Dad says he's having chest pains. You're killing them with this silence." I raised my glass to the ceiling, to emotional manipulation, vintage 1995 and still going strong. I almost caved. Not because I believed them, but because that's what I was conditioned to do, to soothe, to solve, to carry. But then I remembered something my once told me. The silence you keep is often louder than the things you say. So I kept it. By Christmas Eve morning, the messages had gone from dramatic to biblical. There were Bible verses, please, one cryptic post from Haley that read, "Some people forget who fed them when they were starving," followed by a family photo, her mom and dad on the couch, 3 stockings on the wall. Mine wasn't there. And that's when I broke my silence. Not with a call, not with a message. Just a single post, a photo album titled "Just So We're Clear," and a caption that read, "Sometimes family isn't who you were born to. It's who doesn't ask for proof every time you say you're tired." Inside were screenshots, bank transfers, insurance payments, mortgage statements with my routing number blacked out, dates, totals, no commentary, just receipts. The reaction was immediate. Comments flooded in. Some cousins I hadn't heard from in years messaged privately. "Dude, are you serious? You were paying all that. They always made it sound like you bilayed on them." I had no idea, man. That's messed up. Mom's Facebook went dark within the hour. Dad changed his profile picture to a photo of him fishing, classic avoidance. Haley posted something passive-aggressive about people who thrive on drama. I didn't respond, not out loud, but I booked one more night in the motel. At 6:32 p.m., I got a voicemail from Dad. "You've gone too far, son. Too far. You humiliated us. I don't even know who you are anymore. You used to be loyal, now you're just cruel. Congratulations, you've ruined Christmas." That was rich, considering I wasn't even invited. Then at 7:01 p.m., Haley sent a final text. "You made your point, they're freaking out. Mom's not eating. Dad's threatening to sell the house. Are you happy now?" No, I wasn't happy, but I was honest. For once, I was honest with myself. I stared at the screen for a long time and typed a reply. Then I deleted it. Instead, I sat with the silence again. And this time I realized I wasn't waiting for them to understand. I was finally learning to stop explaining. I didn't respond to Haley's final text, the one where she said, "Are you happy now?" because I wasn't, not really. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated, just tired, like someone who'd been dragging a suitcase uphill for 10 years and finally let go of the handle. On Christmas morning, I woke up to silence. No calls, no threats, no guilt bombs, just the hum of the motel mini fridge and a blinking light on my phone, an unread voicemail from an unknown number. I pressed play. "Caleb, this is Mr. Calloway again. I've spoken to your parents and I think emotions are just high right now. They'd like to meet in person. No pressure, of course, but I believe a calm discussion could resolve this." I stared at the ceiling. Resolve what exactly? The decade-long family gaslighting, the financial hostage situation. Still, a part of me was curious. I texted back a time and location. "Tomorrow, 6 p.m., Denison's Diner off Route 12, booth in the back, neutral ground, public setting, fewer chances for screaming, or at least less volume if they tried." I didn't tell them I'd be bringing someone else. The next evening I arrived 10 minutes early and ordered coffee. No food. I didn't trust my stomach to behave. The place was quiet. Low lighting, old jukebox in the corner, holiday lights still blinking like they hadn't gotten the memo. I chose a booth in the back, the kind where you could see the door and every exit. At exactly 6:03 p.m. they walked in. Dad in his stiff jacket, jaw set like stone. Mom holding her purse like it might flee the scene without her. Haley in oversized sunglasses indoors, which was either a fashion choice or a weak disguise. They slid into the booth without speaking. I didn't greet them, just watched. Dad went first. "We don't want this to get uglier than it already is." Mom chimed in, voice fragile. "We're a family. We've all said things we didn't mean." Haley sniffed. "But posting our private stuff online? That was low, Caleb. Even for you." I leaned back. "Even for me? Interesting take." Dad narrowed his eyes. "You humiliated your mother, your sister, me." I sipped my coffee. "No, you did that yourselves. I just stopped covering it up." Haley's sunglasses slipped a bit. Her eyes were red. "You didn't have to cut us off. That house." That house, I interrupted, was being partially paid for by someone who wasn't allowed to step foot in it for Christmas. Let's not pretend this was about logistics. Dad clenched his fists on the table. We came here to fix this, but if you're going to keep playing the victim— No one's playing anything, I said, voice flat. I just stopped funding my own erasure. I reached into my coat and pulled out a folder, thick, neatly tabbed. Since we're all here, let's be clear. I slid it across the table. Inside, records of every transfer I'd made, every bill I'd paid, a signed document from the lender confirming I'd ceased contributions, Haley's car insurance log, and yes, screenshots, all the ones they'd conveniently forgotten. Mom's face paled. Dad's went red. Haley's lips pressed into a line so tight, I thought she might implode. We didn't ask for all of that, Mom whispered. You didn't have to, I said, you just expected it. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You think this makes you better than us? No, I said quietly. Just not stupid enough to keep paying people who treat me like a burden. Haley ripped off her sunglasses. You are being cruel. You're doing this to your own family. Family is a two-way street, I said. I've been walking it alone for years. Then the bell above the diner door jingled. I didn't have to look, I already knew. Uncle Tom walked in, tall despite the cane, silver hair combed back, eyes sharp as ever. He wore a coat older than me and an expression that made the entire booth freeze. Well, he said, voice calm, this is cozy. Dad stood up, panic flickering across his face. Tom, I didn't know you were in town. You never do, Tom said. That's your problem. He turned to me. Caleb, good to see you. You holding up? Better now. He looked at my parents, then Haley. I heard about the messages, the way you spoke to him, the lawyer, the crying. You always were good at acting, Ron. Dad opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Funny thing, Tom continued. When Caleb visited me last year, quietly mind you, he never asked for a thing, helped me clean the gutters, talked to me like I mattered. And when I had that health scare, he was the only one who showed up, and he flew over from another continent to be there. Mom started to speak. Tom raised a hand, save it. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. He dropped it on the table in front of my dad, my updated will, signed 2 weeks ago. Caleb is the sole beneficiary. The silence was nuclear. The house, the land, the savings, it all goes to him. Haley's mouth opened. You're joking. No, Tom said, I don't joke about consequences. Dad looked like he'd been punched. You're cutting us out. I'm finally cutting the rot, Tom said, and no, you can't contest it. I had it notarized and filed with my attorney. He turned back to me. I should have done this sooner. I'm sorry I waited. I nodded, throat tight. You did it in time. Tom turned and left, no dramatics. Just the quiet sound of his cane tapping against the tile floor. I stood up, dropped a few bills on the table. Thanks for meeting. Mom blinked fast. Caleb, please, you made your decision, I said. This was mine. Dad growled. So you're just going to walk out after everything we did for you? I looked him dead in the eye. You didn't do anything for me. You did things to me. And now I'm done. I left. That night back at the motel, I got one last message from Haley. I don't know who you are anymore. I didn't reply. But I whispered to the empty room. Someone who finally learned how to leave. Epilogue. 2 months later, I stood in the middle of Uncle Tom's living room, surrounded by moving boxes, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness. Not silence, the bad kind, the guilt-laced kind, but real stillness. Peace. I'd take and leave again after the estate was finalized. The lawyer handled everything smoothly. No drama, no challenges, just a transfer of ownership from someone who saw me, truly saw me, to someone who finally understood what being seen could mean. The house was small, old, quiet, but it was mine. And not because I'd earned it through blood or guilt or obligation, but because someone believed I deserved better than survival. I kept one photo on the mantle, me and Uncle Tom, from that last visit. We were sitting on his porch, laughing about something I can't even remember now. I just remember the look on his face. Pride, that rare kind of love that doesn't announce itself, just shows up. I haven't spoken to my parents or Haley since that night at the diner. There were a few messages after the will became public, some begging, some accusing. I blocked them all. And I didn't feel guilty, not anymore. You don't owe anyone your peace just because they share your blood. Sometimes family is who drains you. And sometimes freedom is what happens when you finally stop letting them. I'm not sure what I'll do next. Maybe I'll turn the house into something meaningful, a place for vets to rest. Or maybe I'll just live in it for a while, learn how to exist without bracing for impact. Either way, I'm not looking back. Thanks for listening. Really, this story wasn't easy to tell, but maybe someone out there needed to hear it. Let me know in the comments, do you think I did the right thing? Would you have handled it differently? And if you want to hear more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. Story 6, we've basically been on a break. Guess you're slower than I thought, she said. I thought I was living in a relationship. Turns out I was just a side character in her performance. I got played right inside my own home. So my girlfriend just rewrote 2 years of our relationship history to justify cheating. I need you guys to tell me I'm not losing my mind here. I've been with Vanessa for 2 years, living together in my apartment for the past 8 months. Things weren't perfect lately. We've been having some tension and weren't as intimate as usual, but I thought that was normal relationship stuff. You know how it is. Work gets busy, life gets stressful, and sometimes the romance takes a backseat. Looking back now, maybe I was blind to some signs. She'd been more distant, spending more time on her phone, getting irritated over small things. But honestly, I attributed it to work stress. Her company was going through layoffs, and she'd been pulling long hours trying to prove herself. I actually tried to be supportive by giving her space and handling more of the household stuff. Last Friday morning, Vanessa told me she was going to visit her sister Emma for the weekend. Said Emma was going through a really rough divorce and needed emotional support. Emma lives about 3 hours away, so it made sense she'd stay overnight. Take as much time as you need, I told her while making coffee. Emma's lucky to have you. She gave me this weird look I couldn't read at the time. Yeah, well, family comes first, right? She left Friday evening around 6 p.m., kissed me goodbye like normal and said she'd be back Sunday evening. I told her to drive safe and text me when she got there. She did text me around 9 p.m., made it safe. Emma's a mess, but we're talking through everything. Love you. I sent back heart emojis and told her I loved her too. Saturday, I had a pretty normal day. It felt kind of nice having the place to myself, if I'm being honest. We've been on top of each other a lot lately, with both of us working from home sometimes. Saturday night around 10 p.m., I get a text from my buddy Jake. Dude, isn't that Vanessa at the Marriott downtown? With a photo attached. My stomach dropped through the floor. Clear as day, Vanessa walking into the hotel lobby with some guy I didn't recognize. She was wearing the black dress she usually saves for date nights with me. The guy had his hand on her lower back in a way that was definitely not platonic. I stared at that photo for probably 10 minutes straight, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I called her immediately. It rang once, then went straight to voicemail. That never happens, her phone is always on. I tried again 5 minutes later, same thing. Then I tried calling from my work phone in case she was screening my calls, straight to voicemail again. I spent the entire night pacing my apartment, checking her social media, nothing posted, calling every hour. By Sunday morning, I was a wreck. I'd barely slept and I felt sick to my stomach. I kept looking at that photo, zooming in, trying to convince myself it wasn't really her. Sunday afternoon, I tried calling Emma directly. I'd only met her a few times, but I had her number from when we all went to their mom's birthday last year. Oh, hi, Chris. Emma sounded surprised. Is everything okay? Hey, Emma, I just wanted to check on you. Vanessa said you were going through a tough time with the divorce. Long pause. Divorce. What divorce? Mark and I are fine. The world tilted. Wait, what? Vanessa said she was coming to see you this weekend because you needed support. Chris, I haven't talked to Vanessa in like 2 months. I thanked Emma and hung up. Then I literally had to sit down just to process it all. Vanessa had lied about everything. Sunday evening, she came home around 7 p.m., acting completely normal. Dropped her bag by the door, kicked off her shoes, asked about my weekend like nothing happened. How was your time with Emma? I asked, watching her face carefully. Exhausting, she sighed dramatically. Divorce drama is so draining. She's better now, though. We talked through a lot of stuff. I'm watching her lie directly to my face, and I can barely breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. That's good that you could help her, I said quietly. Yeah, well, you know how protective I am of family. She came over and kissed my cheek. What did you do while I was gone? I waited until she was settled on the couch, then pulled out my phone. Actually, I wanted to ask you about something. Jake sent me this yesterday. I showed her the photo. The color drained from her face completely, but only for about 2 seconds. Then her expression hardened and she got defensive. You had me followed? What the hell, Chris? Jake happened to be downtown for dinner and saw you. Who is that guy, Vanessa? She stared at the photo for a long moment and I could practically see her calculating what to say. Finally, she sat down across from me and sighed like I was being unreasonable. That's Patrick, my ex. I felt like the ground was falling away beneath me. Your ex. You told me you were visiting your sister. I just called Emma Vanessa. She's not getting divorced. She hasn't even seen you in months. Another pause. Then, okay, look, Chris, we've basically been on a break the past month. You know things haven't been good between us. I stared at her in complete shock. A break? What are you talking about? We never discussed any break. Come on, Chris, look at how we've been acting lately. When's the last time we were really intimate? When's the last time we went on a real date or had a meaningful conversation? We've been like roommates living parallel lives. So because we hit a rough patch, that automatically means we're on a break. That's not how relationships work, Vanessa. You don't just decide that we're broken up and start seeing your ex. She rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. I figured someone as smart as you would pick up on the signals and realize where this was heading. Guess you're slower than I thought. That hit me like a physical slap. Here I was, finding out my girlfriend of 2 years spent the weekend with her ex-boyfriend, lied about where she was going, and now she was calling me slow for not realizing we were on a break that was never once discussed or agreed upon. Did you sleep with him? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Long pause, she looked away. We reconnected, yes. Did you sleep with him? Chris, we're adults. Patrick and I have history. It wasn't planned, it just happened. I had to leave the room before I said something I'd regret. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked hollow, shocked. When I came back, she was sitting there scrolling through her phone, looking annoyed rather than guilty. So let me get this straight, I said, sitting back down. You decided we were on a break without telling me, lied about visiting your sister, spent the weekend with your ex in a hotel, and somehow I'm the problem for being upset about this. Don't be so dramatic, Chris. These things happen in relationships when people grow apart. We can work through this if you stop being so black and white about everything. Work through this? You cheated on me, Vanessa. You planned it, you lied about it, and now you're trying to rewrite history to make it my fault. I didn't cheat, we were on a break. We were not on a break, we never discussed a break. We were still saying, I love you every day. We were still sleeping in the same bed. We were still planning things together. You don't get to retroactively declare us broken up because you wanted to sleep with your ex. She stood up and crossed her arms. Fine, Chris, be angry, but Patrick reminded me what it feels like to be with someone who actually wants me, who makes effort, who doesn't take me for granted. That was it, I was done. Get out. What? Get out of my sight. Go to your room or wherever. I don't care. I can't look at you right now. She stomped off to the bedroom and slammed the door. I sat on my couch and tried to figure out what the hell just happened to my life. Reddit, am I crazy? Is this how breaks work? Because I thought you had to actually discuss and agree to a break for it to be real. I'm sitting here feeling like I'm living in an alternate reality where cheating is just reconnecting, and I'm supposed to be grateful she came home to me instead of staying with him. Edit to answer common questions. No, we absolutely never discussed a break. Not once. If anything, I only thought we were working through a rough patch like normal couples do. Going to have a serious conversation with her tomorrow about where we go from here. Pretty sure I already know where this is heading, though. Update 1. Posted 2 weeks ago, so yesterday morning I sat Vanessa down and told her I wanted to end the relationship. I'd spent the whole night thinking and reading your comments, and I realized this wasn't something I could come back from. I was calm, direct, and as fair as I could be under the circumstances. Her immediate response was tears, big, dramatic sobbing. Chris, you're throwing away 2 years over one mistake. I chose you. I came home to you. Patrick wanted me to stay, but I chose us. You didn't choose us when you planned to spend the weekend with him, then lied to my face. It wasn't planned, it just happened. We ran into each other and one thing led to another. Vanessa, you packed a bag, you drove 3 hours in the opposite direction from Emma's house, you checked into a hotel together. That's not just happening, that's planning. When the crying didn't work, she switched to bargaining mode. Started talking about couples counseling, how she'd do anything to fix this, how Patrick meant nothing and was just a moment of weakness during a confusing time in our relationship. We can work through this, Chris. All couples go through rough patches. If you really loved me, you'd fight for us instead of just giving up. I stayed firm. I'm not giving up on anything, Vanessa. You already ended this relationship when you decided to sleep with Patrick. I'm just accepting reality. That's when she started getting angry. The mask slipped and I saw something I'd never seen before, this cold calculation behind her eyes. Where exactly am I supposed to go? I gave up my lease to move in with you. I don't have anywhere else to live. You have 30 days to find a place. That's more than fair. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then she tried a completely different approach. She came over and sat right next to me on the couch, put her hand on my thigh. Started talking in this soft, breathy voice about how good we were together, how this was just a bump in the road, how we could be stronger than ever. You know you still love me, Chris. You know what we have is special. Don't throw it all away because of one night. When she leaned in to kiss me, I moved away. Don't. Chris, baby, you know you still want me. I can see it in your eyes. We can work through this together. I stood up, feeling disgusted. Are you seriously trying to seduce me right now, after what you did? Do you think I'm that pathetic? I'm trying to remind you what we have together, what we could have again. What we had, past tense. That version of us died when you decided to cheat on me. She got really pissed then and her true colors came out. You know what, Chris? Maybe I should call a lawyer, tenant rights and all that. You can't just kick someone out without proper notice. I could fight this. I almost laughed. Go ahead and call whoever you want. You're not on the lease, you don't pay rent, you have no legal claim to this place. Any lawyer worth their fee will tell you that you're essentially a guest who's overstayed their welcome. That shut her up real quick. I could see her realizing that her threats were empty. The rest of the day was tense. She kept trying different approaches, crying, angry outbursts, trying to guilt me about abandoning her, attempting to be seductive. She even tried to put the blame on Patrick, saying he had somehow manipulated her. It was like watching someone cycle through a playbook of manipulation tactics. When none of the tactics she tried worked, she switched to the silent treatment, which honestly is a relief. But I can tell she's plotting something. She keeps making hushed phone calls and gets quiet when I walk by. Yesterday, I heard her talking to someone about legal options and tenant rights. 26 days left. Honestly, I just want her gone so I can start processing this and moving on. Update 2. Posted 1 week ago. Jesus Christ, you guys warned me, and I still wasn't prepared for this level of calculated manipulation and vindictive behavior. I feel like I'm living with a complete stranger who looks like my ex-girlfriend. So here's what's happened in the past week. Remember how I gave her a credit card linked to my account for emergencies and shared expenses when she moved in? Yeah, well, apparently our breakup constitutes a massive shopping emergency. She's charged over $2,300 in the past week. Designer clothes from Nordstrom, expensive dinners at restaurants we used to go to together, a full spa day package, high-end makeup, even a massage and facial combo. When I confronted her about it, she had the audacity to say, "Well, I'm stressed about being made homeless. Retail therapy helps me cope." Vanessa, you're not homeless. You have 30 days to find a place and you have a job and savings. This is financial abuse, Chris. You're trying to control me with money. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Financial abuse is charging $2,300 on someone else's credit card without permission, which is exactly what you just did. I've been using that card for months. You never had a problem with it before. That was when we were together and you were buying groceries and necessities, not revenge shopping, because I won't let you cheat on me without consequences. I immediately called the credit card company and canceled the card. She screamed at me for 20 minutes about controlling behavior and how I was showing my true colors. The irony was not lost on me. She's also been systematically calling our mutual friends with her sob story, but she's not just seeking support, she's actively trying to turn them against me. According to her version of events, I'm abandoning her over one tiny mistake and throwing her out on the streets like trash because I'm jealous and controlling. She's conveniently leaving out the lying, the planning, the weekend-long affair, and her complete lack of remorse. My friend Mike called me Wednesday. "Dude," Vanessa called crying. She says you're being really harsh about some misunderstanding. Maybe you guys should work things out? She seems really sorry. I had to explain the whole situation again from the beginning. Once Mike heard the actual facts, he immediately apologized and said he'd only gotten her manipulated version. The same thing happened with 3 other friends. She's been methodically going through our social circle, getting to them before I can, and poisoning the well. I'm realizing I need to be more proactive about telling people what really happened before she gets to them with her lies. This is the part that really shows how vindictive and calculating she's become. Tuesday night, I come home from work around 7 p.m., and there's some random dude sitting on my couch like he owns the place. They're watching MY Netflix on MY TV, drinking my beer, and she's got her legs draped over his lap like they're a couple. "Who the hell is this?" I asked, not even trying to hide my anger. "This is David," she says casually, like it's the most normal thing in the world. "We met at Starbucks today. We're just hanging out and getting to know each other." I looked at this guy, some hipster douche with a man bun and expensive sneakers. "You need to leave right now." David looked confused and a little scared. Vanessa said this was her place too, and I don't care what she said. This is my apartment and you need to get the hell out. "Chris, you're being so rude," Vanessa protested. "I'm allowed to have friends over." "Not in my home, get out," I told David directly. After he left, I told Vanessa this was completely unacceptable. "You're bringing random men you just met into my home? What the hell is wrong with you? It's not like we're together anymore, Chris. I can see whoever I want and hang out with whoever I want. Not in my apartment, you can't. This is my home, not some hookup spot for you to parade random guys through." "God, you're so possessive. This is exactly why our relationship fell apart. Our relationship fell apart because you cheated on me with your ex. Don't try to rewrite history." She got this smug, calculated look that I'd never seen before. Well, maybe I should invite Patrick over next time. At least he knows how to treat a woman right. That's when I realized this wasn't just about moving on or finding comfort. She was actively trying to hurt me as much as possible. Thursday night, she brought home a different guy. Friday, it was a third one. Each time acting like it was completely normal, and I was the crazy one for being upset about strangers in my space. Saturday morning, I'd had enough. I sat her down and said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to stop bringing unauthorized people to my apartment immediately. You're going to stop lying to our friends about what happened between us. And you're going to start actually looking for a place to live instead of playing these games." "Or what?" she challenged. "Or I'm going to start documenting everything for legal purposes. The credit card fraud, the harassment, the trespassing, all of it." "Legal purposes?" she laughed, but I could see uncertainty in her eyes. "You gonna sue me, Chris? For what?" "Credit card fraud for starters, charging $2,300 without permission on an account you're not authorized to use. Harassment for your campaign to turn our friends against me with lies. Maybe criminal trespass for bringing unauthorized people into my home after I've explicitly told you not to." Her face changed completely. I could see the wheels turning as she realized I wasn't just making empty threats. "You wouldn't actually try me, Vanessa. You want to play games and try to destroy my life because I won't accept being cheated on. Let's see how that works out for you in court. I guarantee you won't like how it ends." She got very quiet and serious then. "You're threatening me. I'm promising you, keep pushing and see what happens. I've been trying to handle this civilly by giving you 30 days to leave on your own, but if you want to escalate this into legal territory, I'm prepared for that too." For the first time since this whole thing started, she looked actually scared. She's been researching apartments on her laptop ever since that conversation and hasn't brought anyone over. 11 days left. I think I'm finally getting through to her that this is really happening and her manipulation tactics aren't going to work. Edit. For those saying I should have kicked her out immediately, legally, I had to give her proper notice even though she's not on the lease. I wanted to do this by the book so she couldn't claim I illegally evicted her. Yes, I'm documenting everything now. Screenshots of the credit card charges, photos of the random guys she brought over, text records of her threats and admissions. If she wants to play legal games, I'm prepared. Final update. Posted 3 days ago, it's over. Vanessa moved out yesterday morning, and I feel like I can breathe again for the first time in 3 weeks. After my last update, she finally realized I was dead serious about the legal consequences. My threat to document everything and pursue legal action really scared her. She knows credit card fraud is a real crime with real consequences, not just relationship drama she could spin. She spent the next few days actually apartment hunting for real. She found a place with 2 roommates across town. From what I overheard of her phone calls, it's not nearly as nice as my place, but that's not my problem anymore. The last 7 days were tense but mostly peaceful. She stopped bringing random men over and cut back on the manipulation tactics. though she did make a few more attempts, to no avail, of course. Old habits die hard, I suppose. I stayed in my bedroom with the door closed while they moved her stuff. I could hear them talking and laughing like this was just a normal moving day, not the end of a 2-year relationship that she destroyed. The casual tone of it all was actually helpful. It reminded me that I meant so little to her that losing me wasn't even worth being sad about. Before she left, she knocked on my bedroom door. "Chris, can we talk for just a minute?" I opened the door but didn't invite her in. "What?" "I just want you to know that you're going to regret this. What we had was special, and you're throwing it away because you can't forgive one mistake." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No love, no anger, no regret. Just tired relief that this was almost over. What we had was built on trust and honesty. You destroyed both of those things and then tried to convince me it was my fault. I don't regret protecting myself from someone who could lie to my face and then call me slow for being hurt about it. She didn't have an answer for that, just stared at me for a few seconds, then turned and walked away. I changed the locks immediately, had a locksmith on standby, called the credit card company to confirm the account was completely secure, and got a new card with a different number. Then I ordered pizza, opened a beer, and watched football in MY apartment in complete peace. The silence was incredible. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no manipulation attempts. Just quiet, peaceful solitude in my own space. Reddit, thank you. Seriously. Your comments really helped me stay strong. You reminded me what normal looks like when I was drowning in manipulation and lies. I'm doing really well now. Actually excited about being single for the first time in years. I've got my self-respect, my home, my friends, the real ones who didn't fall for her manipulation, and my peace of mind. She's got Patrick and a sketchy living situation with roommates. I think I came out ahead. Edit. For those asking about Patrick, honestly, I almost feel sorry for the guy. He has no idea what he's getting himself into. She showed him her best behavior for one weekend, but he's about to learn what happens when the mask comes off. But that's not my problem anymore. Yes, I'm keeping the evidence I collected just in case she tries any legal bullshit later. But honestly, I think she's too busy enjoying her freedom with Patrick to bother me anymore. The saga is complete. Time to move forward. Story 7. Okay, Reddit, I'm completely lost here and need some reality checks because honestly, I can't tell if I'm being a total dick or if I'm finally standing up for myself. So my ex Sarah, 26F, has been living with me, 29M, for like 10 months now. She moved in after losing her job back in Denver, and it was supposed to be temporary, maybe 2 months tops while she got her shit together. I figured I'd help out with rent and bills since that's what you do for someone you care about, right? Well, those 2 months have turned into almost a year, and I'm basically broke at this point. Don't get me wrong, Sarah tried at first. She was applying everywhere, going to interviews, the whole deal. But every single job had some major problem. The retail place didn't pay enough, the office job had red flags, the restaurant gig was too stressful. When she finally took this customer service position, I thought we were golden. Nope. She'd call out sick like twice a week, always had anxiety or the manager was being mean or whatever. But then she'd be totally fine an hour later wanting to go grab dinner somewhere. Look, I get that mental health is real, but something felt off about the timing. Here's where I'm probably the idiot. I kept covering everything. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, you name it. I work construction management so I make decent money, but not support 2 adults forever money. I'm behind $4,200 on my house payments. Both my credit cards are maxed. Last month I had to borrow money from my brother just to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, I'm eating fucking ramen every day while Sarah orders takeout because she doesn't feel like cooking. The moment everything clicked was 3 weeks ago. I'm sitting there with a calculator trying to figure out which bill to pay first when Sarah walks in with Target bags. Shows me this $200 receipt for some dress because she needed retail therapy, while I'm literally choosing between electricity and water. That's when she hits me with, "Actually, Marcus, I don't think we're compatible long term. We should probably break up." I was shocked, but honestly, part of me was almost relieved. Like maybe this would force us both to figure our lives out. But then came the real kicker. "I hope we can stay friends though, and obviously I'll need time to find a place, so I was thinking I could crash here a few more months, maybe 6. I'll help out when I can, but you know how tight money is for me right now. I just stared at her. She breaks up with me but wants to keep living in MY house, eating MY food, using MY everything, while contributing absolutely nothing. And she said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. I told her she needed to move out. Not like immediately because I'm not a monster, but within a reasonable time frame. She got all hurt and shocked like I'd suggested something crazy. I can't believe you'd kick me out when I'm struggling. I thought you actually cared about me. And that's what's fucking with my head. I do care about her. That's why I've been slowly going broke for almost a year. But she just ended our relationship, and somehow I'm still supposed to be her financial safety net. My friend Tony thinks I'm being completely reasonable. My coworker Lisa says I'm being too harsh and should give her more time. My brother wants to know why I didn't kick her out months ago. Honestly, I kept thinking she'd get her act together, that things would improve, that we'd work it out. But we're not working anything out anymore. She made that decision. So why am I still expected to bankroll someone who doesn't even want to be with me? Sarah's been doing this passive-aggressive thing for 3 weeks now, where she barely talks to me but makes these comments about how some people abandon you when you need them most. Like, I get that she needs help, but I'm drowning here and she doesn't seem to give a shit. The worst part is I keep wondering if I'm being a vindictive asshole. Like maybe I'm just hurt about the breakup and taking it out on her. Maybe she really is doing her best and I'm being unfair. I've never dealt with anything like this before. So what do you think, Reddit? AITAH for wanting my ex out of my house after she dumped me but expects to keep living here for free. Or should I suck it up and let her stay until she's ready to leave? Because right now I feel like I'm losing my goddamn mind. Update 1. Hey Reddit, back with an update that's honestly making me question everything I thought I knew about my relationship. First off, thanks for all the responses on my original post. I've tried having the conversation with Sarah 3 separate times now, and each time the same thing happens. Last Tuesday was typical. I sat her down and said, "Sarah, I'm behind on my mortgage. I need you to contribute $400 a month or start looking for a place." She got this wounded look. Tears started welling up. "I thought you loved me, Marcus. Why are you doing this to me when I'm already struggling?" And just like that I melted, started backtracking immediately. "I do love you, I just meant, I'm doing my best," she whispered. "I never thought you'd keep track of every dollar like this." 20 minutes later I'm apologizing for being insensitive. Every single time. The pattern is always identical. She'll improve for exactly 1 week. Suddenly she's applying to jobs again, helping with dishes, being super affectionate. Then slowly, over the next few days, she slides back to the same behavior. It's like clockwork. What's really messing with me is realizing how she does it. Several people in my comments mention this. She doesn't get angry or defensive. Instead, she gets this hurt look and makes me feel like I'm kicking someone when they're down. She never actually says she can't afford to contribute. She just makes me feel like a monster for asking. I think I need to explain something I didn't mention in my first post. My parents had this absolutely brutal divorce when I was 12. Screaming matches, throwing things, using me as a messenger between them. I spent years trying to keep the peace, walking on eggshells, doing whatever it took to avoid conflict. Sarah figured this out somehow. She's really good at making me feel like I'm being the unreasonable one. My brother David pointed out something that hit me like a truck. He said, "Marcus, in all these conversations where she promises to do better, has she ever actually said she can't contribute more money? Or does she just make you feel bad for asking?" I thought about it. Holy shit, he's right. Sarah never says she's broke. She never shows me her bank account or explains where her money goes. When I asked her to pay $300 a month toward expenses, she didn't say, "I don't have $300. She said, "I'm hurt that you'd change the rules when I'm already struggling." That's not the same thing, not even close. So I started paying attention, and the things I'm noticing are kind of blowing my mind. Last week she mentioned grabbing coffee with her friend Emma. That's $6 right there. She bought expensive shampoo instead of using the generic stuff I get. Another $12. She ordered lunch delivery on Tuesday because she didn't feel like making a sandwich. $18 with tip. None of these are huge expenses, but they add up. More importantly, they show she has money for things she wants. She just doesn't think she should have to spend it on boring stuff like rent or groceries. The real wake-up call came when I changed the Wi-Fi password. I wasn't trying to be petty, I was looking at cutting expenses and realized I'm paying $80 a month for internet that she uses more than I do. When I told her she'd need to chip in half if she wanted the password, she didn't say she couldn't afford it. She got quiet and sad. I'm disappointed that you're nickel and dimming me like this. But then she had the $40 transferred to me within 2 hours. Not next week, not when she figured out her budget. 2 hours. She had the money. She'd always had the money. She just didn't want to pay. I'm starting to realize that our entire relationship might have been built on me being afraid of her disapproval. Not her anger, her disappointment. She never yells or threatens or manipulates in obvious ways. She just withdraws, gets quiet, makes me feel like I'm being mean and unreasonable until I cave. The thing is, it's working less well now. Maybe because we're not together anymore, or maybe because you guys helped me see the pattern, but I'm not immediately rushing to fix her feelings when she gets sad about my boundaries. Last night she mentioned that her friend Jessica offered her a couch to crash on, but it would be really hard to start over somewhere new. She was clearly waiting for me to say, "No, don't go, we'll figure something out." Instead, I said, "That sounds like it could be a good opportunity for you." She looked shocked, like genuinely surprised that I didn't immediately offer to solve her problem. I'm not gonna lie, Reddit. This is scary as hell. Part of me still wants to take care of her, to make sure she's okay, to be the good guy who doesn't abandon people. But I'm also starting to see that maybe taking care of her has been hurting both of us. She's never had to develop real independence because I keep catching her when she falls. I think I'm finally ready to ask her to leave. Not because I hate her or want revenge, but because this situation isn't working for either of us. I'm drowning financially, and she's not growing as a person. The plan is to give her 30 days notice this weekend. I've been documenting our conversations and researching tenant rights just in case things get messy. My therapist says I need to prepare responses for when she tries the usual tactics, have my points written down so I don't get derailed by tears and guilt trips. I'm terrified she'll cry and I'll cave again, but I think I need to try. Like You Tough Love 2024 said in the comments, I need to sit with the discomfort of someone being disappointed in me instead of immediately trying to fix it. Wish me luck. I'll update you guys on how it goes. Update 2, Reddit. I'm back and honestly feeling like I'm in some weird psychological thriller where I can't trust my own judgment anymore. So I gave Sarah the 30-day notice like I said I would. Spent the whole week beforehand psyching myself up, writing down talking points, preparing for tears and manipulation. My therapist even helped me practice responses to her usual guilt trips. The conversation went nothing like I expected. I sat her down last Sunday morning and said, "Sarah, I need you to find somewhere else to live by the end of the month. This arrangement isn't working for either of us anymore." She didn't cry. She didn't get upset. She just looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, like she was disappointed but not surprised. Then she said, "Okay, I figured this was coming." That was it. No tears, no "I thought you loved me," no promises to do better, just acceptance. I was so prepared for a fight that her calm reaction actually threw me off more than crying would have. I found myself almost wanting to take it back, to say we could work something out. But I managed to stick to my guns and told her I'd help however I could with the transition. "That's okay," she said. "I've got it handled." And apparently she does. Over the past 6 weeks, I've watched Sarah transform into this completely different person. She's been actively apartment hunting, reached out to 3 different friends about temporary housing, and even started picking up extra shifts at some part-time job I didn't even know she had. Wait, what? A job I didn't know about? Turns out Sarah's been working at this boutique downtown for the past month. Not full-time, but enough to make decent money. When I asked why she never mentioned it, she just shrugged and said, "You never asked, and it wasn't really relevant to our situation." Our situation. Like she was talking about a business arrangement, not a relationship. The more I watch her handle this move, the more I'm realizing how capable she's always been. She found an apartment in 2 weeks, a nice 1-bedroom place that she can apparently afford on her own. She's been systematically packing her stuff, organizing logistics, even coordinating with a moving service. This is the same person who couldn't manage to contribute $300 a month to household expenses for 10 months. Here's what's really messing with my head. Our dynamic has completely changed, and not in the way I expected. Sarah's not cold or hostile, she's just indifferent. She's polite when we interact, but there's zero emotional investment. It's like living with a courteous roommate who's counting down the days until they leave. Last Tuesday, I came home to find her cooking dinner. Real dinner: chicken, vegetables, the works. My first instinct was to ask if she made enough for two, like I always used to. But before I could say anything, she looked up and said, "I'm meal prepping for the week. There's leftover pizza in the fridge if you want something." Not mean, not passive-aggressive, just matter of fact. It hit me that she's been taking care of herself this whole time. She just wasn't taking care of us. The weirdest part is how this is affecting me. I thought I'd feel relieved, vindicated, maybe even a little smug about being right. Instead, I feel empty, like I've been playing this game where I was the responsible one and she was the helpless one, and suddenly she's revealed that she was never actually playing. My friend Tony came over last weekend and couldn't believe the change. "Dude, she seems more put together now than when you were together," he said. "It's like she was just coasting before." That word hit me hard, coasting. I've been thinking about what being said in my last post about enablers and enabled people getting trapped in these cycles. I think Sarah wasn't maliciously manipulating me, she was just taking the path of least resistance. Why stress about money and responsibility when someone else will handle it? Why develop coping skills when someone else will manage your emotions for you? And I was so invested in being needed that I never questioned whether she actually needed me or if I was just convenient. The financial stuff is still a mess, by the way. I'm still behind on everything, still paying off debt, still eating ramen more often than I'd like. But at least now I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. My mortgage company worked out a payment plan, and without Sarah's expenses, I should be caught up in about 8 months. What's harder to fix is this weird sense of purposelessness. For almost a year, my entire life revolved around managing our situation, worrying about money, trying to motivate Sarah, walking on eggshells. Now that she's handling her own life, I don't know what to do with myself. My therapist says this is normal, that people in codependent relationships often feel lost when the dynamic changes, even when the change is positive. She's been helping me figure out what I actually want for myself, separate from taking care of someone else. It's harder than it sounds. Sarah's moving out this weekend. She asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime after she settled, to talk about everything. I'm not sure if that's a good idea. Part of me wants closure, wants to understand what the hell happened between us. But another part of me thinks maybe some questions don't need answers. Like several people mentioned in my comments, maybe the point isn't to figure out if she was consciously manipulating me or just being thoughtless. Maybe the point is that it doesn't matter, the result was the same either way. I keep thinking about what my brother David said. The real question isn't whether Sarah's a bad person, it's why you stayed in a situation that was making you miserable for so long. I'm still working on that answer. 2 more days and she'll be gone. I thought I'd be counting down the hours, but honestly, I'm kind of dreading the quiet. This house is going to feel really empty, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe I need to learn how to fill my own space instead of letting someone else's chaos take up all the room. I'll update you guys once she's moved out and I've had some time to process everything. Thanks for sticking with me through this mess. Update 3. Hey Reddit, final update here. Sarah moved out 2 months ago and I've had some time to process everything. This is going to be long because there's a lot to unpack. The actual move-out day was anticlimactic as hell. Sarah had everything organized like a military operation. Movers showed up at 8 a.m. She had everything packed and labeled, and by 2 p.m. she was gone. No dramatic goodbye, no last-minute emotional scene. She just handed me her key and said, "Thanks for everything, Marcus. I hope things work out for you." That was it. 10 months of my life, thousands of dollars in debt, and it ended with a polite handshake. I thought I'd feel this huge sense of relief, but instead I just felt hollow. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in ways I'd never noticed before. I kept expecting to hear her moving around upstairs or calling out to ask if I wanted anything from the kitchen. The silence was deafening. The first few weeks were rough. I'd come home from work and just sit in my living room, not sure what to do with myself. I realized how much of my daily routine had revolved around managing our situation, checking bank accounts, worrying about bills, planning conversations about money. Without all that chaos, I didn't know how to fill the time. My therapist helped me understand that I'd been using Sarah's problems as a distraction from my own life. As long as I was focused on fixing her situation, I didn't have to think about what I actually wanted for myself. Pretty fucked up when you think about it. About 3 weeks after she left, I ran into Sarah at the grocery store. She looked good, really good, confident, put together like she was thriving. We chatted for a few minutes. She told me about her new apartment, mentioned she was thinking about going back to school, seemed genuinely happy. And I felt like shit. Not because I wanted her back, but because seeing her doing so well made me realize how much I'd been invested in her needing me. Some part of me had expected her to struggle without my support, to realize what she'd lost. Instead, she seemed more herself than she'd ever been when we were together. That night, I called my brother David and had probably the most honest conversation of my life. I think I wanted her to fail, I told him. I think I was more invested in being her savior than in actually helping her. David was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Marcus, do you remember when Mom and Dad were getting divorced? You used to follow Mom around the house trying to cheer her up, bringing her tissues when she cried, doing extra chores so she wouldn't have to worry about anything." I did remember. I was 12 and convinced that if I could just be good enough, helpful enough, maybe she wouldn't be so sad all the time. "You've been doing the same thing with Sarah," David said. "Trying to fix someone else's problems so you can feel valuable." Fuck. He was right. I've been in therapy twice a week since then, working through this pattern. Turns out I've been doing this my whole life, gravitating toward people who need help, then getting resentful when they don't appreciate my sacrifices the way I think they should. My therapist calls it codependency with a hero complex, which sounds way less noble than I thought I was being. The financial recovery has been slow but steady. Without Sarah's expenses, I've been able to catch up on my mortgage payments and start chipping away at the credit card debt. I should be completely caught up by next spring. I'm eating actual food again instead of ramen, which is nice. But the emotional recovery has been harder than I expected. I keep catching myself looking for someone to rescue. There's this woman at work, Jennifer, who's going through a messy divorce, and I found myself offering to help her move, to lend her money, to basically repeat the same pattern. I had to consciously step back and ask myself why I was so eager to get involved in her problems. The answer wasn't pretty. I like feeling needed. I like being the good guy who steps up when others won't. It makes me feel important, valuable, like I matter. But it's not actually about helping people, it's about feeding my own need to be seen as indispensable. About 6 weeks ago, Sarah texted asking if I wanted to grab coffee and talk. I almost said yes immediately, but my therapist suggested I think about what I was hoping to get from that conversation. Did I want closure, an apology, for her to acknowledge how much I'd sacrificed? Honestly, I wanted her to tell me that she'd made a mistake, that she realized how good she'd had it with me. I wanted validation that I'd been the good guy in our story, but that's not what closure is supposed to be about. So I texted back and said I wasn't ready for that conversation yet, maybe someday in the future. She responded with, "I understand. Take care of yourself, Marcus." No guilt trip, no manipulation, no attempt to change my mind, just respect for my boundary. It was probably the healthiest interaction we'd ever had. I'm not dating anyone right now, and I'm not planning to for a while. I need to figure out how to be in a relationship without trying to fix the other person. My therapist says I need to learn the difference between supporting someone and enabling them, between being generous and being a doormat. It's harder than it sounds. My instinct is still to jump in and solve problems for people I care about, but I'm learning to ask myself, am I helping them, or am I helping myself feel important? Usually it's the second one. The house still feels empty sometimes, but I'm starting to fill it with things I actually want instead of just reacting to someone else's chaos. I bought a decent couch, started cooking actual meals, even got a dog, a rescue named Murphy, who's currently asleep on my feet as I type this. Murphy doesn't need me to fix his problems. He just needs food, walks, and someone to throw his tennis ball. It's refreshing as hell. I know some of you wanted this story to end with Sarah getting her comeuppance or me finding someone better who appreciates me properly. But real life isn't that neat. Sarah wasn't a villain, she was just someone whose coping mechanisms were incompatible with my well-being. And I wasn't a hero, I was someone using generosity to avoid dealing with my own issues. We were both messed up in ways that made each other worse. The real victory isn't that I won or that she learned her lesson. It's that I'm finally starting to understand why I stayed in a situation that was making me miserable for so long. And more importantly, I'm learning how to build a life that doesn't require someone else's problems to give it meaning. So Reddit, to answer my original question, no, I wasn't the asshole for wanting my ex out after she broke up with me and expected to keep living rent-free. But I was an asshole to myself for letting it go on so long. Thanks for helping me see that. Sometimes you need outside perspective to realize you're drowning. I'm still working on swimming, but at least now I know which way is up.